Chapter 201, The Alchemist's Mechanical Marvel. Blake's warning came a tad too late. Nicole Flamel had already pressed the button. In the next moment, the entire vehicle began to shake violently. Ha! Just as I thought. You've done more than just tweak the energy core, haven't you? Blake said, holding his forehead in resignation. The transformation of the automobile was underway. The chassis contracted inward, the sides of the trunk flipped up, and the four wheels retracted. Soon, the original passenger seat morphed into a brand-new cockpit, and a helmet automatically positioned itself onto Nicole Flamel's head. From the outside, the transformation was complete. The once red sports car had now become a towering 5-meter-tall battle mech, adorned with a striking red paint job. "Oh, a small battle puppet that I can control," Nicole Flamel exclaimed, his excitement palpable as he surveyed his surroundings. Blake responded with a helpless tone. "Nico, please, don't start pressing buttons again." "That row of buttons? They're all weapons." Nicole Flamel withdrew his hand, having almost pressed them again out of curiosity. While he was eager to discover the extent of Blake's modifications, he certainly didn't want to risk demolishing their house and facing eviction from their residence at 870 by Paranol. "Ahem. Sorry, Blake. I was just curious about your modifications. I apologize," Nicole Flamel said, his tone sincere. Despite being a master alchemist, he showed no arrogance. "It was my oversight," Blake admitted, scratching his head. "I should have been more forthcoming about it. As an apology, let me offer you a gift. Let's make amends." "First, let's revert this mech back to its original form," suggested Nicole Flamel. Blake fell silent, then awkwardly confessed, "About that. I only managed to complete the transformation earlier today, so I haven't yet added a function to revert it back to its original state." This explained why Blake had stopped Nicole Flamel from pressing the button. Without a restoration module, the mech couldn't be transformed back into a car for the time being. "Oh, that's all right," Nicole Flamel reassured him. "My secret base could use a bit of excitement. It looks like we have our evening cut out for us, don't we?" Under Nicole Flamel's guidance, Blake, filled with anticipation, piloted the mech towards their destination. Although he was the one who had engineered the transformation, this was his first time actually controlling it. True to the saying that practice is the best test of truth, Blake encountered several unforeseen issues during the operation. Nicole Flamel, recognized as the world's most distinguished alchemist, offered Blake numerous invaluable suggestions. Their destination, Nico Flamel's secret base, was cleverly concealed beneath an unassuming tree in the garden, hidden from view by surrounding foliage, a testament to why it had remained undiscovered by Paranol for so many years. Guided by Nicole Flamel, Blake maneuvered the mech to gently touch a specific spot on the tree. The ground in front of the tree began to descend like an elevator, taking the mech down with it. Once fully descended, a patch of lawn slid over the opening, seamlessly blending back with the surrounding ground. Meanwhile, night had fallen, but Fleur found herself unable to sleep, her mind preoccupied with thoughts of her brother. "Sister, take me to see the Lord tomorrow. I want to play with brother," she pleaded. "Sister, where did brother go?" she inquired, her curiosity unabated. "Sister, does brother not remember Gabriel?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. Fleur lay in bed, staring blankly at the ceiling, while her younger sister incessantly shook her, desperate to find the boy named Blake Green. It seemed her sister's determination knew no bounds. Fleur Delacour felt a surge of frustration, realizing that sleep might elude her tonight. "I'll say it again. That boy's not French. He might have already gone home," she said, trying to quell the disturbance with a tone of resignation. "Really? But does that mean I'll never see Gabriel again?" Gabriel's eyes brimmed with tears, making Fleur's irritation grow. With a sigh, Fleur pulled the quilt over her head, only for Gabriel to cry out as expected. Okay, I promise you," Fleur said, wishing she could kick herself for giving in. "I'll take you to see him tomorrow, but if we can't find him, don't blame me." Gabriel's mood instantly brightened. "Really? Sister, you're not lying, are you? Please don't cry. Sleep now, or I won't take you to find Brother Blake tomorrow." Gabriel quickly snuggled under the quilt, closing her eyes tightly, as if afraid that any delay would make her sister change her mind. Fleur was momentarily taken aback by her own thoughts. This is absurd. How could this be happening? Sure, the boy is somewhat handsome, with a certain charm, but no. She shook her head, trying to dispel the thought. Perhaps Gabriel will forget about him by tomorrow? Fleur lamented their parents' decision to leave them alone while they traveled. Now I'll have dark circles under my eyes tomorrow. My beauty sleep is ruined. The scene shifts to a grand ceremony where Fleur is about to be honored. Now, we present the youngest recipient of the Order of Merlin, first class in history, Fleur Delacour. As she stepped onto the stage, her moment of triumph was abruptly interrupted by a cold splash on her face, followed by the audience's laughter. To her dismay, she discovered that Blake Green was the culprit, with Gabriel making faces beside him. "Ah, you little brat!" Fleur exclaimed, her anger flaring as she saw Gabriel holding an empty glass, looking back at her with defiance. "Who told me to call you so many times? And you didn't wake up," Gabriel retorted. Fleur, caught between laughter and anger, exclaimed, "Do you even know what time it is? It's only 6 o'clock. Do you have any idea when I went to bed? 3 in the morning, because someone wouldn't stop crying." Gabriel looked down, embarrassed, but insisted, "But it's daylight now. Sister, you promised me last night. We're going to find Brother Blake." Fleur, exhausted and frustrated, tried to clean up the mess but remembered that magic was forbidden during the holidays. After changing the pillows and sheets and enduring more of Gabriel's insistence, she finally gave in. With dark circles under her eyes and a mix of anger and resignation, Fleur prepared to take her sister on a quest to find Blake, wondering where he could have gone. Furong was seething with frustration. "Blake, I swear if I see you again," she muttered under her breath, her fists clenched in anger. Meanwhile, Blake was strolling through the streets of Paris in the crisp early morning air when he suddenly sneezed. "Ah! Achoo!" He chuckled to himself. Who could be thinking of me at this hour? Hermione? Cassandra? Or perhaps little Hannah? Or maybe one of the senior sisters? He mused, recalling the events of the previous night. Blake and Nicole Flamel had inadvertently spent the night at Flamel's secret base. The next morning, they discovered that Perenelle Flamel was missing. In a twist of fate, the location of Nicole Flamel's secret base, which had been concealed for over a century, was revealed thanks to the confession of a house elf. Shortly thereafter, the base was destroyed, and both Blake and Nicole were unceremoniously evicted. Rumor had it that this was a lesson for the two of them, one young and one old, to reflect on their reckless disregard for their well-being. In an unexpected turn of events, an exhilarated Nicole Flamel whisked Blake away to a luxurious 5-star hotel, at no cost. The hotel, it turned out, was owned by Nicole Flamel himself. In terms of wealth, Blake realized even the affluent Grindelwald paled in comparison to Nicole Flamel. Concerned for their safety, Blake activated a magical mirror space in their hotel room, allowing Nicole to catch up on some much-needed rest. Meanwhile, Blake set out on a shopping spree, his sights set on purchasing a large quantity of meat. His unusual shopping list was intended for the soon-to-hatch mutated giant spiders he was tending to. As Blake rubbed his face, trying to shake off the morning chill, he headed towards the nearest meat market. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, he spotted a girl turning the corner. "Huh? Cassandra?" His interest piqued. He noticed her unhappy demeanor. What a coincidence. But why does she look so troubled? Without hesitation, Blake quickened his pace, eager to catch up with her and find out what was wrong. Chapter 202, Cassandra's Daring Scheme. Blake was in hot pursuit, his mind racing back to a conversation they had on the Hogwarts Express. He had inquired about Cassandra's holiday plans, to which she had vaguely mentioned embarking on a lengthy journey. Unlike the typical excitement that accompanies travel plans, Cassandra's demeanor was markedly indifferent, almost resistant. It led Blake to wonder, could her destination have been France all along? Is this a mere coincidence? I never expected to encounter her here, Blake thought, concern etching his features. I hope she doesn't find herself in any trouble. There's this unsettling feeling I can't shake off. As Blake rounded the corner, Cassandra had disappeared around. He found it deserted. Puzzled, he explored the vicinity and noticed a narrow alley. It was short, allowing one to see its end at a glance, yet there was no sign of Cassandra. Refusing to give up, Blake's attention was drawn to a set of slender footprints on the ground. leading to the alley's dead end where they abruptly vanished. Approaching the wall, Blake mused, a wall cloaked in protective and invisibility enchantments? Fascinating. He knew that the strength of such magic wasn't its forte. A direct and forceful approach could easily dismantle it. Yet, he opted for subtlety over brute force, not wanting to prematurely alert anyone to his presence. With a light tap in the air, Blake initiated a spell that transformed the space before him into a mirror-like portal, which then shattered, allowing him entry into a mirrored dimension. Here, he confidently cast an explosive spell at the wall, obliterating it along with its magical defenses, all without affecting the real world. Stepping over the debris, Blake finally spotted Cassandra. However, being in the mirrored dimension, he remained invisible to her and anyone else in the real space. The mirrored dimension offered unparalleled advantages over traditional invisibility spells, providing complete concealment without any interaction with the physical world. After ensuring his surroundings were exactly as he wanted, Blake restored the wall to its original state, erasing any evidence of his intervention. The room beyond the wall was large, its floors covered in dust and cobwebs draping from the ceiling, indicating long-term abandonment. Yet, at the center stood a cluttered table laden with food and drinks, surrounded by 5 or 6 wizards in peculiar attire. It was clear to Blake that these individuals had repurposed this room as a temporary base, though their intentions remained a mystery. Cassandra was there, engaged in a heated discussion with a middle-aged man sporting an odd fashion sense. A neat 3-piece suit paired with flared trousers and a tall top hat, creating a bizarre ensemble. Blake edged closer, the sounds from the real world reaching him as if muffled by water. He overheard Cassandra's firm voice. "No, you can only speak with me. I intercepted your letter." The man, stroking his thin beard, seemed taken aback by her audacity. Blake, intrigued by Cassandra's boldness and the unfolding situation, prepared to intervene if necessary, all the while pondering the nature of Cassandra's daring plan. Cassandra's calves trembled slightly beneath her composed exterior, betraying her true state of nervousness. "Really? Discussing business matters? And with a young girl like you?" one of the men sneered. "Sheffield, draft another letter to Mr. Tenford," he instructed another. Cassandra's face momentarily flashed with panic, but she quickly masked it. "Your efforts are futile," she retorted confidently. "I've already exposed your true intentions to my father. He won't be deceived by you again." Blake frowned, observing the scene. Cassandra, despite her bravery, was still too inexperienced. Her actions inadvertently revealed her vulnerabilities. If Mr. Wally was aware of the gang's true nature, why would he send his young daughter to confront them? It didn't add up. The man's interest piqued at Cassandra's defiance. "What do you think we are?" "We're merely legitimate herbal medicine merchants," he claimed with a smirk. "Legitimate? Are you certain?" Cassandra challenged, her voice laced with skepticism. "The Worley family's herbal business is currently being undermined by the Rookwood family, thanks to a special nutrient that accelerates herb growth. You claim to possess the formula for this nutrient, intending to sell it to my father." "And what's wrong with that?" the man interrupted, unfazed. "After a thorough investigation, one of my associates managed to acquire the Rookwood family's formula. We simply wish to offer it to your father at a fair price. This should be a cause for gratitude, not suspicion, especially given the precarious state of your family's business." Cassandra's response was icy. "I highly doubt such a crucial formula would fall into your hands so easily. Unless, of course, you're in league with the Rookwood family, or the nutrient itself is flawed. Either scenario would spell disaster for us." The man sighed, a mix of admiration and pity in his voice. "What a clever girl you are, yet so naively misguided. You haven't truly convinced your father, have you?" Cassandra took a step back, her confidence wavering. "If you had truly persuaded your father, why come here alone? Do you think you can expose our true colors by yourself? Even if we admit to having ulterior motives, what can you possibly do about it? Do you believe you can leave here unscathed?" Despite her evident fear, Cassandra made no move to flee, her gaze darting behind her. Blake, observing quietly, began to piece together the situation. Cassandra's decision to confront the gang seemed foolhardy, a pointless sacrifice. But then it dawned on him. Was Cassandra expecting someone? Was this all part of a dangerous gambit? She might be waiting for her father or an auror from the Ministry of Magic to arrive. If reinforcements arrived in time to witness these men attacking her, it would certainly dissuade Mr. Wally from any dealings with them. After all, who would harm a child without cause? This plan, while potentially effective, was fraught with risk. Timing was critical. If the reinforcements were delayed, or if Cassandra was incapacitated too early, the plan would fail disastrously, possibly costing her life. As the tension in the room escalated, it was clear that everything hinged on the precise timing of the rescue. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the air between them heavy with an ominous silence. Suddenly, the strange man burst into laughter, breaking the stillness. Okay, I'll stop teasing you, little girl," he said, amusement evident in his voice. Cassandra's face drained of color, her voice barely a whisper. You knew we were waiting for the aurors? But how?" The man's smile widened, a hint of mockery in his tone. "How did I know about your plan? Simple. We have our people among the aurors. And really, how seriously did you think they would take an inexplicable report? My people made sure your report was disregarded." He drew his wand, his gaze fixed on Cassandra. "I must admit, you're an interesting one, smart and brave. Perhaps, if you were to lead the Wally family in the future, we might find ourselves at a disadvantage. Unfortunately, you're still too young." With each step he took forward, Cassandra retreated, terror etched across her face. She clutched at her necklace, her voice trembling. "Impossible. I drank." Blake noticed the necklace, the lucky potion he had sent her, gleaming between her fingers. Only half of the potion remained. It dawned on him then why Cassandra had dared to execute such a perilous plan. She had relied on the lucky potion he had given her, a testament to her immense trust in him. Perhaps it was the potion's luck that had led her to him. "Don't worry, little girl. We're not monsters," the strange man said, a false reassurance in his voice. "I won't kill you, but I will cast a spell to make you forget this ever happened." As he pointed his wand at Cassandra, a new voice echoed from behind him. "Sir, I believe you won't be harming anyone today." Cassandra's eyes, wide and green, sparkled with a mixture of fear and hope. Blake stepped out from the shadows, his presence a silent promise of protection. The dynamics had shifted, and the strange man found himself no longer the predator, but prey, in a game that had taken an unexpected turn. Chapter 203. Those big emerald green eyes. No one is confused. "Blake, why are you here?" Cassandra exclaimed, her eyes wide with shock as she stared at Blake. "I just walked in," Blake replied nonchalantly, strolling past a peculiar man with his arms folded as if the man were nothing more than air. He approached Cassandra with an ease that belied the tension in the room. "You just walked around." Cassandra's astonishment was evident. "You're taking too much risk this time." Blake reached out, gently touching Cassandra's head, an action that made her blush and push his hand away. "Why does he always act so mature?" she thought, frustrated. "He's the same age as me. You shouldn't have come in." Cassandra's concern quickly resurfaced as she remembered the perilous situation they were in. If the strange man's words held any truth, they were in grave danger. Without backup, the villains before them could do as they pleased without anyone ever finding out. "Don't worry, with me here, these guys can't hurt anyone," Blake reassured her softly. The peculiar man and several other wizards in the room were taken aback. Blake seemed to have appeared out of thin air, without a sound. Apparition usually made a noise, but Blake's arrival was silent. Moreover, the room was fortified with magic that prevented apparition, and the door was enchanted with defensive and alert spells. Yet, Blake had bypassed all these measures without triggering any alarms. The strange man, realizing that Blake was no ordinary boy, raised his wand and cast a spell at Blake's unsuspecting back, hoping to incapacitate him without further ado. Stupefy! The spell, however, seemed to softly dissipate upon contact with Blake, leaving him unscathed. The man's eyes widened in horror. He knew the potency of his spell, which should have at least knocked Blake unconscious or caused significant impact. Yet, it was as if the spell had been absorbed by Blake's back. Confused but undeterred, the man and the other wizards launched several more stun spells at Blake. Cassandra, witnessing the initial curse and fearing for Blake's safety, cried out, "Be careful." Blake, however, remained calm and did not even turn to face the attackers. "It's all right. Their spells won't work on me," he assured her, his voice steady and confident. True to his word, the barrage of spells had no effect on him. Unbeknownst to the attackers, Blake's cloak, a levitation cloak, was not just any ordinary garment. It had the power to block even the deadliest of curses, rendering the stun spells completely ineffective. The realization that Blake was untouchable, even by a group attack, left Cassandra in awe. His calm demeanor in the face of danger and his mysterious ability to nullify their spells underscored the depth of his abilities. Blake was not just a talented duelist. He was in a league of his own, a protector whose presence brought hope even in the most dire of circumstances. Afterwards, Blake effortlessly activated the dimensional mirror positioned behind him, causing the spells cast by his adversaries to be harmlessly absorbed into the mirror's space. This baffling sight left the attackers bewildered, their spells seemingly hitting their target, yet having no effect whatsoever. Upon witnessing Blake emerge unscathed, Cassandra's mouth fell open in shock. Only after Blake had secured several treasure chests from both Cassandra and their foes did he leisurely turn to face the wizards, who were gearing up for another assault. This time, however, they seemed to have adopted a different strategy, with one wizard daring to cast a lethal spell. But before the spell could fully manifest, Blake gestured towards the caster, who was then propelled backwards, crashing into a wall with such force that he spat out blood and slumped to the ground, appearing as if several of his bones were broken. "An expulsion spell?" one of the bewildered attackers muttered. Blake had not wielded a wand nor uttered a single incantation, yet he had managed to incapacitate one of their own with a mere gesture. "You aim to harm Cassandra, to harm my friends. Then be prepared to face my wrath," Blake declared, his voice icy. Cassandra, observing Blake's formidable stance, felt a surge of warmth in her heart. In her moment of despair, Blake had appeared like a celestial warrior, her savior. Without his intervention, the outcome would have been dire. She likened Blake to a valiant knight sworn to protect his princess, and in this scenario, she was the princess under his protection. Shaking her head to dispel these thoughts, Cassandra reminded herself of the danger still present and chastised herself for getting lost in fanciful musings. The leader of the attackers, no longer underestimating Blake due to his youth, inquired, "Who are you?" Blake responded with a mysterious smile, "You don't need to know who I am. Frank Rookwood, do you really think your deeds are unknown?" Frank Rookwood's face drained of color at the mention of his name. He was astounded that Blake knew of his secret lineage, a secret known only to himself and his deceased father. How could this young stranger possibly be aware of his true identity? As Frank grappled with his shock, Blake, with a satisfied grin, accepted a golden chest. His ability to read minds had proven invaluable. Frank Rookwood, brother to the imprisoned Death Eater August Rookwood and the Rookwood family's illegitimate son. After your brother's incarceration, you've been covertly controlling the family's assets, Blake revealed, leaving Frank utterly dumbfounded. Blake continued to expose Frank's machinations, detailing how he planned to betray the Worley family, frame Mr. Worley, and ultimately seize their assets. Frank was horrified. His meticulously laid plans, known only to him, were being laid bare by this young man. Blake, having received another golden chest and a system prompt confirming Frank's exposure, decided there was no need for further conversation. He had seen enough to know that Frank's intentions were malevolent, and it was time to put an end to his schemes. Blake possessed remarkable abilities, which he believed could easily outmaneuver a few treasure chests. He wouldn't have engaged in such an extended conversation otherwise. "So, will you surrender without resistance, or must I defeat you?" Blake inquired, delicately wiping his hands with a handkerchief. Frank gripped his wand more tightly, a sense of determination in his stance. "Why bother with such formalities?" Blake mused aloud. He began to utter, "Avada!" But before he could finish, a sudden movement interrupted him. A series of crimson energy chains sprang forth, ensnaring Frank's entire body before he could complete his spell. The remaining wizards found themselves similarly bound, suspended from the ceiling in a display of magical prowess. These were Setorak's crimson chains, a spell of considerable restraint. The wand slipped from Frank's grasp, clattering weakly on the ground. Under the scrutiny of Blake's legitimacy, any attempt at a sneak attack was futile. Blake had anticipated the attack without Frank even making a move. Impossible. Frank's protest was cut short as another red chain wrapped tightly around his mouth. The most effective method to neutralize a wizard involved confiscating their wand, silencing them, and then rendering them unconscious. Blake proceeded to do just that, drawing his wand and casting a spell on each of the captives. One by one, their eyes rolled back as they succumbed to unconsciousness. Blake stowed his wand away, a sense of satisfaction washing over him. He had recently modified his wand so that it would automatically cast a stunning spell upon striking a person's head, blending the principles of magic and physics. This was its first field test, and the results were promising. Frank, in particular, seemed to be enjoying an exceptionally deep slumber. As Blake turned to leave, he caught sight of a pair of large, green eyes filled with an unspoken depth. He found himself momentarily breathless, caught in their gaze. Those eyes had a bewildering ring effect, one that could easily ensnare the heart of anyone who looked into them. In that moment, Blake felt a fleeting connection to Severus Snape. He could understand, perhaps for the first time, why Snape harbored such a deep affection for Lily. The allure of those captivating emerald eyes was undeniable. Yet, as quickly as the thought came, Blake dismissed it. He had no desire to tread the same path as Snape. Shaking his head to clear it of such thoughts, Blake refocused on the task at hand, determined to carve his own path in the wizarding world. Chapter 204, Cassandra. You said there was a goblin prettier than me? Who is it? Blake had no particular interest in emulating Snape, yet he believed it was still within his capabilities to surpass him. As his thoughts wandered, he noticed Cassandra seemed slightly uneasy under his gaze. Why are you looking at me like that? Cassandra asked, a blush tinting her cheeks. Oh, it's nothing. I just think your eyes are beautiful, so I couldn't help but stare for a bit, Blake admitted honestly. Cassandra had received compliments on her beauty since childhood, but they rarely made an impact. However, coming from Blake, these words made her heart flutter with joy. Really? Cassandra blinked her beautiful green eyes. Is it only my eyes you find beautiful? No sooner had she asked the question than she regretted it, fearing it might come across as too forward. Would he think less of her? But Blake responded naturally, Oh, Cassandra, you should have confidence in your charm. Hearing this, Cassandra's spirits lifted once more. Compliments from others didn't matter much to her, but Blake's words were different. Blake continued, Cassandra, you're among the most beautiful girls I've ever met, the second most beautiful to be precise. This time, Cassandra's blush was one of annoyance. To suggest there was someone prettier than her in front of her was baffling. Did he really think she would be pleased to be ranked second? If anyone else had said it, Cassandra would have walked away long ago. But what truly piqued her curiosity and irritation was wondering who could possibly be considered more beautiful than her in Blake's eyes. And who, may I ask, is considered the prettiest girl? Cassandra's eyes, now shimmering with a mix of curiosity and challenge, fixed on Blake. Ding! Angry emotion detected. Ding! Congratulations to the host for receiving a silver treasure chest. Ahem, these individuals have been thoroughly subdued. Next, we must promptly inform your family to come. Blake quickly diverted the topic, sensing the tension. When your father arrives, he'll surely know how to handle the situation, Blake suggested, retracting the red chains from those they had subdued. He chose not to call the Aurors due to insufficient evidence, fearing it might inadvertently protect the wrongdoers. Mr. Wally, Cassandra's father, would be better suited to deal with these underhanded competitors. Cassandra, momentarily distracted by the urgency of contacting her father, momentarily forgot her initial question. However, unsure how to quickly send a message, Blake helpfully blasted a hole in the wall behind him and summoned a blue bird with a wave of his hand. Chirp? The blue bird looked at Blake quizzically. Help Cassandra deliver a letter, Blake instructed. Cassandra quickly scribbled a note, tore the page from her notebook, and handed it to the bluebird. Thank you, Bluebird. Please deliver this to my father, Geoffrey Worley. After the bird vanished in a streak of blue light, Cassandra turned back to Blake, her mind still teeming with questions. Foremost among them was the identity of the girl Blake considered more beautiful. Yet, she chose to inquire about something else first. "How did you come to be here?" she asked. "Oh, it was quite serendipitous. I was out shopping this morning and happened to see you. You seemed troubled, so I followed at a distance. I noticed you entered a place concealed by powerful magic, typically a sign of ill intent. Concerned for your safety, I decided to intervene discreetly." "And sure enough," Blake explained, leaving the sentence hanging as he prepared to share more of his unexpected adventure. Cassandra nodded with a smile, her heart filled with gratitude. If Blake hadn't fortuitously crossed paths with her, she shuddered to think what might have happened. Absent-mindedly, her fingers brushed against the necklace she wore, a vial of lucky potion nestled within. "This lucky potion really does bring me luck," she thought to herself. Blake, observing her actions, let out a sigh. "I can guess what you were planning," he said, his tone carrying a mix of concern and reprimand. "But even with a lucky potion, there's no guarantee of absolute safety. You must understand that." In a swift motion, Blake reached out and took the necklace from around Cassandra's neck, examining the vial that still contained half of the lucky potion. As he ran his fingers over it, the potion miraculously refilled, leaving the vial full once again. "Come here," Blake instructed, noticing Cassandra's puzzled look. When she hesitated, he stepped behind her and gently placed the necklace back around her neck. Cassandra's initial surprise gave way to a soft smile, touched by his gesture. "This potion is meant to save your life in times of danger, not for you to recklessly seek out peril," Blake admonished, securing the necklace. "Next time, I might not be so generous." Cassandra could only muster a quiet, "Oh!" in response, her attention suddenly diverted by a faint blue light. Bluebird, a magical creature known for its ability to apparate, appeared with two figures in tow. Cassandra's face flushed with embarrassment upon recognizing them. "Dad, Mom," she exclaimed, her voice a mixture of surprise and relief. "Cassandra, are you all right? That damned Frank! He lied to me," Mr. Wally began, his anger palpable. However, his tirade was cut short as he noticed Blake standing close to Cassandra, seemingly helping her with the necklace. Mr. Wally, still a striking figure, bore the marks of a man who had once been exceptionally handsome. His attire, overly formal for a casual outing, suggested he had come straight from an important event. Mrs. Wally, in contrast, appeared more approachable in her blue wizard robe, her golden hair and green eyes reminiscent of Cassandra's own features. After a brief moment of confusion, Mrs. Wally turned to Blake with a look of gratitude. "Thank you so much, Blake," she said warmly. "If it weren't for your intervention, we might have lost our precious daughter. It's unbearable to think what could have happened." Blake responded with a modest smile. "There's no need to thank me, Mrs. Wally. Cassandra is a dear friend, and friends look out for each other." Mr. Wally, seizing the opportunity while his wife engaged Blake in conversation, scrutinized Cassandra for any signs of harm. Relieved to find her unscathed, he enveloped her in a protective embrace. "Dad, I've been trying to tell you, we can't trust them." Cassandra protested, her frustration evident. "They even admitted to planning to use the Oblivion curse on me. If it weren't for Blake, I might not even remember who you are." Mr. Wally fell silent, the weight of his daughter's words sinking in. He had gambled everything on a risky alliance, only to realize too late the danger it posed to his own child. "Sorry, Cassandra," he finally said, his voice heavy with regret. "I see now that my leniency over the years has made some forget who I truly am. Don't worry, I'll handle this." In that moment, Mr. Wally's resolve was clear. He would do whatever it took to protect his daughter and make amends for his misjudgment. Blake approached Mr. Worley, who grasped his hand firmly. Despite harboring suspicions that Blake might be a big wild boar, overly protective of his high-quality Chinese cabbage, Mr. Worley couldn't deny the young man's heroism. "You must be Blake. I can't thank you enough for saving my precious daughter. Should you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask," Mr. Worley expressed his gratitude. "Ugh, you're too kind," Blake responded modestly, following another round of pleasantries. Mr. Worley then turned his attention to the hole Blake had created during the rescue. Inside, the assailants lay scattered in disarray, a sight that slightly surprised Mr. Worley. These individuals didn't appear weak, yet they had been easily subdued by Blake. This realization sparked a sense of alarm in Mr. Worley. Perhaps Blake was more formidable than he had initially thought. Observing his daughter, Mr. Worley noticed Cassandra stealing glances at Blake, who was now conversing with Mrs. Worley. The sight made him sigh inwardly, pondering if his daughter's affections were beginning to shift. Could it be? Mr. Worley thought, half-jokingly lamenting, is my baby girl going to leave me for someone else? However, there were more pressing matters at hand. With a determined clench of his teeth, Mr. Worley wielded his wand, beginning the process of repairing the damaged structure. He preferred his wife and daughter to be spared from witnessing the potentially gruesome aftermath of his work. Meanwhile, Mrs. Worley engaged Blake in conversation, her maternal instincts sharply tuned to her daughter's subtle feelings towards the young man. Despite it being premature to discuss such matters, Mrs. Worley couldn't help but scrutinize Blake, considering the possibility of a future connection if he proved to be a suitable match. After all, Blake had managed to do something unprecedented, make her usually stoic daughter blush. Blake's attractive features, reminiscent of two renowned figures, didn't escape Mrs. Worley's notice, further complicating her feelings. Her curiosity about Blake's personal life led her to ask a series of probing questions. Where do you live? Who do you have in your family? Is there a special girl in your life? What are your thoughts on our Cassandra? She inquired. Cassandra, overhearing the conversation, grew increasingly uncomfortable with the direction it was taking. What is this? Is she trying to set me up? She thought, panic rising. Mom, Dad has been inside for quite some time, and these questions... Cassandra interjected, urging her mother to check on her father instead. Mrs. Worley sighed, a hint of disappointment in her voice. All right, I understand. It seems you really do have friends, and you don't need your mother meddling, she said, misinterpreting Cassandra's concern. You? What are you talking about? I'm just worried about Dad, Cassandra protested, clarifying her intentions. Chapter 205, Dilemma. How to handle a compromised secret. Ahem, Mrs. Worley, please wait a moment, Blake interjected, just as Mrs. Worley was about to be humorously relegated to the role of an unwanted third wheel by her eager daughter. Huh? Cassandra cast a suspicious glance at Blake, her mind racing with bewildering thoughts. Could it be that he actually enjoys being interrogated by her mother? Or was there something more to his intentions? The mere thought sent a shiver of disgust through her. Oh, Blake, what's the matter? I assumed that unless it was something urgent, I should assist my husband. After all, it seems Cassandra is quite keen on spending some time alone with you, Mrs. Worley remarked with a knowing smile, causing Cassandra to stare at her mother in disbelief. Mrs. Worley couldn't help but be amused by the rare expression of indignation on her daughter's face. She was tempted to linger just to see what would unfold, so when Blake requested her to stay, she complied, curious about his intentions. Cassandra, feeling somewhat dejected, wondered what Blake was planning. Well, Cassandra, your father has been inside for quite some time. Aren't you concerned? Perhaps you should check on him, Blake suggested, catching both mother and daughter off guard with his unexpected proposal. Cassandra's fists clenched in frustration. Was he trying to send her away to speak privately with her mother? Cassandra, would you? Blake inquired, tilting his head slightly. You. Fine, I'll go. Cassandra huffed, storming through the enchanted brick wall and into the large room beyond. Mrs. Worley watched her daughter's departure in astonishment. Throughout Cassandra's life, she had always been headstrong, rarely heeding anyone's advice except her mother's. Yet, Blake had somehow managed to persuade her to leave. This revelation was startling. It suggested that her proud daughter had set aside her ego in Blake's presence, a feat that seemed nearly impossible given Cassandra's character. Mrs. Worley reluctantly acknowledged that Blake had not only matched, but perhaps even surpassed her daughter in every conceivable way. The realization that her daughter had been utterly captivated by this young man was both surprising and slightly unsettling. As Blake turned to address Mrs. Worley, he apologized for the interruption and expressed his gratitude for her patience. His respectful demeanor won her over immediately. It's quite all right, Blake. What is it that you wanted to discuss? Is it about Cassandra? Mrs. Worley inquired, her curiosity piqued. Blake shook his head. No, this matter is unrelated to Cassandra. Actually, I've taken a personal interest in herbalism and conducted some experiments last school year. I've managed to induce controllable mutations in some precious herbs, enhancing their medicinal properties and even introducing new effects, he explained with a calm confidence. Blake had been cultivating these herbs in the room of requirement, meticulously documenting the mutation conditions of the seeds. He had chosen to keep these developments under wraps until now, recognizing the potential significance of his research. Mrs. Worley listened intently, intrigued by Blake's passion for herbalism and the implications of his discoveries. It was clear that Blake was not only a remarkable young wizard, but also a dedicated scholar, capable of captivating her daughter with his intellect and ambition as much as his character. The platform wasn't large enough. Even with Professor Sprout's assistance, the reach would remain limited. However, today presented a unique opportunity. By saving Cassandra, Blake found a chance to collaborate with the Wally family, who controlled a vast herbal medicine business. According to recent information from Frank, the Wally family was facing a crisis. Blake's mutated plants could be the timely aid they desperately needed. If the output can't compete with others, then the quality of the medicine will surpass them. Blake was confident Mrs. Wally would realize this. By partnering with the Wally family, his unique herbal medicines would gain worldwide recognition. This venture would not only allow him to accumulate wealth, but also provide the necessary funds for his alchemy and potions research. Do you claim to have discovered a method to induce specific mutations in seeds? Mrs. Wally asked, skeptical. The fact that these words came from a child barely 11 or 12 years old made her even more doubtful. If it weren't for Blake's recent heroics in saving Cassandra, she might not have even entertained his claim. The difficulty of achieving specific mutations in seeds was well known among herbalists, making her skepticism understandable. Blake smiled, aware of her disbelief. Yet he knew that actions spoke louder than words. He presented several bags to Mrs. Wally, each containing seeds of the venomous tentacula. These weren't ordinary seeds. Each bag represented a different direction of mutation. Upon inspecting a bag, Mrs. Wally's initial casual demeanor changed dramatically when she realized these were not ordinary venomous tentacula seeds, but mutated ones. In the realm of herbal medicine, a mutated seed was a treasure, as it could produce numerous mutated plants, a rarity among thousands. As Mrs. Wally examined the seeds more closely, her excitement grew. "All of these are mutated seeds," she exclaimed after inspecting the other bags Blake had brought. She looked at Blake in astonishment, asking if he had cultivated them himself. "Yes, I've been growing them at a suitable location at school for some time," Blake replied, listing other herbs he had successfully mutated, such as devil's snare, humping willow, and mandrake. Mrs. Wally was visibly impressed. She began to understand why her daughter was so taken with Blake. If his claims were true, she admitted she would be equally captivated. "Clearly, you're not offering these precious seeds just for my admiration. What do you seek in return?" she inquired, ready to agree to almost any demand. She jokingly added that if Blake desired Cassandra's hand, that would require her daughter's consent, though she doubted Cassandra would object. Blake nearly choked on his own saliva at the suggestion, taken aback by Mrs. Wally's forwardness. No, it's not what you think, Mrs. Wally," Blake hastily corrected, noticing the surprised expression on Mrs. Wally's face. Her amusement was evident as she smiled and prompted, "Then enlighten me. What is it that you want?" Regaining his confidence, Blake replied with a smile, "I'm interested in investing in technology." Meanwhile, Mr. Wally, wand in hand and looking rather dejected, addressed his daughter Cassandra, who was aimlessly wandering around the room. "Darling, I can't concentrate on my work with you hovering around here." He had been in the midst of using magic to interrogate some suspects, and the timing had been crucial. Cassandra's unexpected entrance meant Mr. Wally had to pause, wanting to shield her from potentially distressing scenes. Consequently, the interrogation had lost its momentum. I don't want to be here either. It smells awful," Cassandra grumbled, her frustration evident. "And it's all Blake's fault. He had the audacity to send me away so he could speak with my mother alone." Mr. Wally looked at his daughter in astonishment. "He sent you away?" "Yes," she affirmed. Are you certain it was Blake who dismissed you and not your mother? He probed further. Yes, Dad. Why would you even ask that? Cassandra replied, noticing a change in her father's demeanor. Oh, my little girl, Mr. Wally lamented, a mix of sadness and disbelief in his voice. I thought I was the only one who could tell you what to do, but it seems Blake has that influence too. A sense of vulnerability washed over Mr. Wally as he realized his little padded jacket was growing up and becoming independent. Simultaneously, a pang of jealousy emerged, knowing someone else had managed to sway his daughter in a way he thought only he could. Chapter 206, Negotiating Partnerships and Personal Ties. Mrs. Wally found herself without any reason to decline Blake's offer. The introduction of Blake's variation seed technique promised not only to revitalize the Worley family's faltering herbal medicine industry, but also to elevate it to unprecedented heights. Far from rejecting the proposal, she recognized the necessity of nurturing the relationship between the Worley family and Blake, wary of the possibility that he might be enticed by rival families. After reviewing the specifics of their collaboration, Mrs. Wally inquired, "You've chosen to invest in technology, but why insist on compensating Cassandra? Surely you realize that we can't keep this from her." Mrs. Wally understood that Blake's decision to partner with the Worley family was significantly influenced by Cassandra. "I didn't want her presence to sway your decision," Blake explained, spreading his hands. "If she were involved, she'd undoubtedly advocate on my behalf, which could potentially bias your judgment." Mrs. Wally's smile broadened. "Blake, your mutated seed technology is so revolutionary that you could easily prosper without our partnership. Choosing to collaborate with us is, in itself, a tremendous boon," she said. "Rest assured, we haven't finalized the dividend shares yet. I'll consult with Jeffrey upon my return, and will promptly provide you with a proposal." Blake responded with a nod and a smile, his silence speaking volumes about his trust in the Worley family. Mrs. Wally felt a surge of emotion, attributing Blake's faith to his relationship with Cassandra. Determined not to let Blake down, she resolved to ensure the partnership was favorable to him. As for Cassandra and Blake's relationship, Mrs. Wally decided to let it develop naturally. Blake had already proven himself worthy in her eyes. Following their discussion, she promptly passed through the brick wall, deeming the partnership with Blake a higher priority than any interrogation. Blake remained patient. His contribution to the Worley family was not without self-interest. After all, his relationship with Cassandra, their only daughter, was a significant factor. Shortly after, Cassandra emerged, her large emerald green eyes fixed on Blake. "So, you're going to be a major shareholder in our family business? Should I start calling you Little Boss too?" she teased. Blake shook his head. "Titles are irrelevant in business discussions," he replied. "But yes, you'll have to refer to me as boss in the future." Cassandra's annoyance was palpable. "You schemer. My mother told me everything. How could you send me away, knowing I played a role in cultivating those plants?" "That's precisely why I proposed this partnership with your family. Otherwise, I might have approached the Rookwood family, who have recently developed an innovative fertilizer," Blake countered. Cassandra crossed her arms. "Clever move, but if you even think about partnering with the Rookwoods, consider us over." Blake raised his hands in mock surrender. "Terrifying," he joked, before adopting a more serious tone. "Let's not kid around anymore. It's getting late, and now that I know you're safe, I should be heading back." A hint of sadness flickered in Cassandra's eyes. "You're leaving? After finally meeting, can't we spend a few days together before you go?" Blake sighed. "I wish I could, but my visit to France was to see an elder. I only encountered you by chance while out this morning. It's time for me to return." After a prolonged delay, Cassandra expressed her concern, suspecting that Blake's true intentions might not be as straightforward as visiting an elder. Her suspicion was fueled by a previous conversation where Blake had mentioned that she was only the second most beautiful girl he had ever met, leading her to believe that the most beautiful girl must have been someone he met in France. This thought led her to doubt Blake's words, wondering if he was actually planning to meet a woman rather than an elder. Blake, however, confident, clarified his intentions, mentioning Nicole Flamel, who was over 600 years old, and jokingly questioned if she didn't count as an elder. Convinced by Blake's assurance, Cassandra reluctantly agreed to let him go, reminding him to spend time with her during their stay in France. Blake had his own reasons for needing some time away. He was planning to explore a secret realm contained within his backpack, which operated on the same time as the outside world. This realm required his undivided attention, as he believed he was the only one capable of navigating it without any hindrance. Thus, he saw this as an opportunity to inform Nicholas Flamel of his plans under the guise of spending time with Cassandra, providing a perfect cover for his absence. Upon returning to the hotel, Blake was surprised to find Nicole Flamel still awake, fascinated by the mirror space magic that Blake had used. Despite Flamel's eagerness to learn more, Blake insisted he rest, promising to discuss his new ideas about the mirror space later. After ensuring Flamel was asleep, Blake returned to his room to continue his own experiments. He opened the mirror space, took out a large piece of meat, and then focused on a mutated acromantula egg he had obtained. As he infused the egg with druid energy, it began to change color and size, eventually hatching a colorful, palm-sized spider. This moment marked the beginning of a new experiment for Blake, blending his knowledge of magic with his curiosity about the creatures of the magical world. His actions were driven by a desire to understand and possibly harness the powers of the magical creatures he encountered, all while navigating the complexities of his relationships and responsibilities in the magical community. Blake gently picked up the creature with a mix of curiosity and admiration. Quite beautiful, he mused. The acromantula, having been tamed by Blake even before its birth, remained docile in his palm, showing no inclination to move. Satisfied, Blake placed it on a piece of meat. Your attributes are impressive. Enjoy your meal. This mutated giant acromantula, despite its recent birth and palm-sized stature, boasted attributes far superior to those of its kin, even before being hand-fed. It was significantly more advanced than a regular acromantula, with certain enhancements. Barring any unforeseen circumstances, this acromantula, with a growth rate of 0.6, was poised to usurp Aragog as the king of the acromantula tribe. The newborn's appetite was astonishing. A piece of meat, as large as a bull's head, was quickly dissolved into liquid by the tiny spider and then ingested. Blake watched, amazed at its rapid growth. Your growth rate is truly remarkable, he said with a smile, proud of the mutant-quality acromantula bestowed upon him by the system. From now on, you'll be known as Shao Kai. After securing Shao Kai in an original Pokeball, Blake exited the mirror space. Having been occupied all night and into the morning, he felt the weight of exhaustion. Without bothering to change his clothes, he collapsed onto his large, soft bed. Suddenly, an owl flew in through the window and landed on Blake's counter. Rubbing his sleepy eyes, Blake reluctantly took the letter from the owl's beak. Huh? A letter from Fleur Delacour? She wants me to help with her sister? He murmured to himself. With a calm demeanor, Blake grabbed a pen and quickly scribbled a response on the back of the letter. No time. After sending the letter back with the owl, he lay down once more, quickly succumbing to sleep. Chapter 207. Taming Gabriel. At first, Fleur was indulged. Sister, where is my brother? Didn't you say you could help me find him today? Gabrielle's voice was filled with anticipation and a hint of impatience. Sister, why are you ignoring me? Fleur closed her eyes, feeling a headache coming on. She had never found her sister as exasperating as she did now. It used to be that she was the closest person to Gabrielle. But now, as ridiculous as it seemed, someone else had taken her place in her sister's affections. She finally understood why their parents had so readily left Gabrielle in her care while they went on vacation, organizing a trip abroad for themselves. It seemed that when she was at school, her parents found Gabrielle just as tiresome. Thankfully, their parents would be returning tomorrow. Otherwise, Fleur doubted she could endure until the end of the holiday. But for now, she had to fulfill her promise to Gabrielle and help her find Blake. His name had come up the other day, and it didn't seem like a pseudonym. After all, the owl that had been sent with the letter had flown off without hesitation. If it had been a fake name, the owl wouldn't have known where to go. There, Gabrielle, Fleur tried to reassure her sister. Didn't I send an owl with a letter to your brother? I believe he'll respond soon. Fleur had spent the entire day with Gabrielle, hoping that even if they couldn't find Blake, it would at least show that she had tried to keep her promise. Unexpectedly, Gabrielle was adamant about finding Blake, even threatening to continue the search on her own if Fleur decided to go home. Fleur was now convinced that Blake must have done something to influence her sister so profoundly. It was unlike Gabrielle to be this obsessed. Even at her most persistent, she had never acted like this. After a morning of fruitless searching, Fleur's initial reluctance had turned into a determination to find Blake herself. She needed to ask him what he had done to captivate her sister so completely. Suddenly, an owl swooped down from the sky, landing in the small park where the sisters were resting. Fleur quickly took the letter from the owl's beak, making sure no muggles were around to see. "Huh? It's the letter I sent?" Fleur was puzzled. "Hasn't it been delivered?" "No, it's been opened. Did he write back?" Upon inspecting the letter, Fleur discovered a few words written on the back. "No time. No time." Fleur's grip on the letter tightened, crumpling the paper. "He actually said he's not free, and without even an exclamation point." Fleur's mind conjured up an image of Blake, writing "no time" on the letter without emotion, then casually tossing it back to the owl. Her imagination fueled her resentment, and she felt her anger rising. Not only had her sister changed because of Blake, but he had also dared to reject her invitation so dismissively. Fleur had always been popular, the center of attention among boys at school. Despite the envy and resentment from other girls, no one could deny her charm. Yet Blake had rejected her without a second thought, with a mere few words at the end of his letter, not even bothering with proper punctuation. Feeling a mix of anger for her sister and wounded pride, Fleur glanced at Gabrielle, who was eagerly awaiting news. She managed to suppress her anger and gently broke the news to her sister. "Gabrielle, it looks like your brother Blake isn't free today. How about we go back home now?" Gabrielle bit her finger, pondering for a moment before nodding in agreement. "Well, okay, sister, let's go home now." With a sigh, Fleur prepared to take her sister home, her thoughts already on how she would confront Blake about his influence over Gabrielle and his dismissive attitude. Fleur looked at Gabrielle in surprise. She had anticipated a lengthy effort to convince her younger sister to return home. To her astonishment, Gabrielle agreed with unexpected eagerness. Fleur couldn't help but wonder, if Gabrielle had refused to go home and Blake remained elusive, what then? At least, she thought, persuading Gabrielle was a step in the right direction. "Brother said he's busy, so he must be," Gabrielle stated with a seriousness that belied her years. "I must be obedient, so he'll come to see me." Watching Gabrielle's determined stride, Fleur felt a whirlwind of emotions. "Blake, what on earth have you done to my sweet little sister to make her so tame?" she mused, half in exasperation, half in admiration. Yet, the situation wasn't entirely bleak. Fleur devised a temporary solution to pacify Gabrielle, planning to leverage her sister's obedience to coax Blake out of hiding. Blake wouldn't be pleased with Gabrielle acting out, she'd say, confident this strategy would ensure Gabrielle's compliance. While this eased Fleur's immediate concerns, it also stirred a mix of sadness and anger within her. That man, I must confront him. What has he done to Gabrielle? From that day forward, however, all of Fleur's letters to Blake went unanswered. No owl could locate him, leaving Fleur in a state of anxious uncertainty even after her parents returned home. Unbeknownst to Blake, his actions had inadvertently influenced Gabrielle's behavior. Meanwhile, he was preoccupied with his own adventures at the estate of Nicholas Flamel. Safe within the estate, Blake was unaware of Fleur's attempts to reach him, engrossed in his experiments with spiders in the estate's back garden. To preserve the manor's environment, Blake housed a large spider in a mirror space, a concept he had discussed with Nicholas Flamel. This space, once opened, proved capable of sustaining life indefinitely, allowing Blake to raise the spider, now named Little Kai, to an impressive size and intelligence. Recognizing the potential of intelligent magical creatures in combat, Blake, with Nicholas Flamel's enthusiastic assistance, crafted a set of adaptive armor for Little Kai. Nicholas Flamel found the endeavor thrilling, having never before considered outfitting magical beasts. Blake's presence and innovative ideas reinvigorated Flamel's passion for research, dispelling any lingering thoughts of seeking death. Eventually, Blake decided to leave the estate to seek out Cassandra in France, leaving Nagini behind due to her burgeoning interest in alchemy. With all his belongings in tow, Blake departed, leaving a legacy of curiosity and innovation behind him. Meanwhile, Fleur, wandering the streets in a daze, suddenly stopped. Raising her hand, she noticed a bracelet. The bracelet on her wrist began to glow vibrantly. "Blake, you scoundrel! You've finally shown yourself!" Fleur had been tirelessly searching for Blake for what felt like an eternity. Despite her efforts, he remained elusive, a clear indication that he was concealed in a location of utmost secrecy. After all, if he had merely left France, an owl should have been able to locate him. In her desperation, Fleur turned to a friend for help, a friend who secretly admired her. His family was renowned for crafting alchemical tools. From him, Fleur borrowed a bracelet designed to track individuals. She had hoped to use it to pinpoint Blake's whereabouts, but to her dismay, she couldn't detect even the slightest trace of him. For 2 days, Fleur aimlessly wandered the streets of Paris, her gaze empty, beginning to doubt the bracelet's effectiveness. Just as she was about to lose all hope, the bracelet suddenly activated, revealing Blake's location near the heart of Paris. Gripping her wand tightly, Fleur dashed out, determination fueling her steps. "Blake, just you wait." As Fleur hurried through the bustling streets, a young woman in a green dress emerged from a nearby shop. She caught the tail end of Fleur's determined shout. Curiosity piqued. She decided to investigate. It didn't take long for her to spot Fleur charging ahead. "Huh, that girl," she muttered to herself. Recognition dawned on her face. "Ah, so you're the enchanting fairy Blake mentioned. I won't let you get away." Without a second thought, she took off after Fleur. Cassandra, the girl in the green dress, had suddenly pieced together the puzzle. Blake had once spoken of a girl who captivated him, ranking her above all others. Now, seeing Fleur in action, Cassandra understood exactly who he had been referring to. Driven by a mix of curiosity and determination, she joined the chase, eager to see how this unexpected encounter would unfold. Chapter 208, The Concealed Bridge Pier. Blake discovered an exceptionally secluded spot, a bridge pier hidden from the usual paths of passers-by, making it a rare find. It was almost guaranteed that no one would venture near this place. Deciding it was the perfect location for his mysterious endeavor, Blake had initially planned to open the secret realm within the confines of mirror space, believing it to be foolproof. However, after a trial, he realized that the secret realm could not be initiated there. Left with no choice, Blake sought another hidden location to open the secret realm, as the exit point upon clearing the realm would be the same as the entry point. It was crucial to ensure that no one would witness his sudden appearance upon return, which could lead to unnecessary complications. To prevent being seen, Blake knew he only needed to cast a few simple spells for concealment and protection. After ensuring the area was devoid of people, he took out his wand and began the incantation. Muggle Repellent Charm. Protective Shield. Magical ripples emanated from his wand, gradually enveloping the bridge pier. To any Muggles that approached, an urgent matter would suddenly come to mind, compelling them to leave. Wizards, on the other hand, would only see an ordinary pier, with the bridge pier itself becoming invisible to their eyes. Once the protective spells were in place, Blake returned to the concealed bridge pier, his gaze fixed on a cloud icon within his system inventory, the gateway to the secret realm he intended to open. "System, activate the secret realm," Blake whispered. "Ding! The secret realm activation is in progress." "Ding! The secret realm has been successfully activated. Please focus your magical energy into the portal." "Ding! Countdown to the secret realm's opening begins." Ensuring his safety, Blake fortified himself with numerous protective spells to avoid any immediate threats upon entering the secret realm. He also reverted his levitation cloak to its original half-blue, half-red state. Then, with intense concentration, Blake began to channel his magical energy into the secret realm's icon, momentarily oblivious to the world outside. Meanwhile, Fleur, guided by her bracelet, arrived at the bridge, puzzled. "Where's Blake?" she murmured, checking the bracelet's indicator. "It clearly shows he's here." Her confusion cleared as she spotted a likely spot. Ah, he must be under the bridge! Despite the bridge's deserted appearance and the dry riverbed below, Fleur didn't dwell on the oddity. Spotting a small ladder, she descended. Shortly after Fleur's descent, Cassandra arrived at the abandoned bridge. From a distance, she had seen Fleur climbing down and decided to follow without hesitation. Reaching the bottom, she found Fleur staring bewilderedly at a bridge pier. Cassandra, driven by several blocks of pursuit and not one to inquire about someone's dazed state, approached Fleur with determination. Her chase had been arduous, her target always a few steps ahead due to longer legs. Confronting Fleur, Cassandra asked, "Hi, do you know Blake?" Fleur turned to see a young girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, whose beauty was notable, though her demeanor was less appealing. Fleur, accustomed to admiration, found the girl's confrontational attitude off-putting. "Are you speaking to me?" she replied, her English tinged with a cold accent. "Of course. Who else would be here?" Cassandra retorted, standing before Fleur. The tension between them was palpable, both slightly out of breath from their respective pursuits. Just moments ago, Furong was asked if she knew Blake. Hearing Blake's name once again plunged her into a state of despondency. It seemed that Blake had finally made an appearance, but despite her efforts to track him down, he remained elusive. The reason? The bracelet she wore indicated that Blake was currently at this very pier. The piers, solid and imposing, made it seem impossible for Blake to be within. Yet, the bracelet's persistent signal suggested otherwise, pointing directly ahead to a bridge pier. This contradiction left Furong feeling bewildered and lost. Cassandra, observing Furong's behavior, mistook her silence and fixation on the pier as a sign of confusion or madness. "Hey, I'm talking to you," Cassandra exclaimed, irritation lacing her voice. "What are you doing looking at that broken bridge pier?" Furong, snapping out of her reverie, pointed towards the stone pier and explained, "That's because Blake is inside this stone pier right now, according to my bracelet." Cassandra, taken aback, stared at the solid pier incredulously. You crazy woman? You've encased him in the pier?" Her mind raced with concern, especially since Blake had been unreachable for days, staying at Nicholas Flamel's estate without sending any mail. Moreover, Blake had recently angered the Rookwood family on behalf of the Wally family, adding to Cassandra's alarm. "What is your relationship with the Rookwood family? Why harm Blake?" Cassandra demanded, her wand aimed at Furong, her eyes clouded with suspicion and fear. Furong, frustrated by the accusation, retorted, "You idiot, who said I put him in the pier?" Confused, Cassandra questioned, "Then how do you explain?" "I'm trying to find him," Furong clarified, her frown deepening. "But the bracelet indicates he's inside the pier. It shouldn't be malfunctioning." Cassandra, realizing her mistake, felt a bit foolish for jumping to conclusions. Yet, her pride made it difficult to admit her error outright. You are so suspicious. Why should I trust you?" she challenged, before impulsively deciding to destroy the pier. "Get out of the way. Let me blow up this pier. I'm going to see if Blake's in there." Furong, alarmed, questioned Cassandra's willingness to use magic outside of school. Undeterred, Cassandra cast a spell, Thunderbolt Explosion. Inside the bridge hole, Blake, who had been waiting for the teleportation process of the secret realm to complete, was startled by the commotion outside. The protective magic he had set up was meant only to conceal, not to defend. As a result, he was completely exposed when Cassandra's spell struck. Thunderbolt Explosion! Cassandra's voice echoed as the spell was cast. Blake, realizing the imminent danger, could only curse in shock as the protective magic failed to shield him from the attack. The explosive curse bypassed the protective enchantments effortlessly, hurtling directly towards Blake. "Woj, protection against magic," Blake muttered, barely audible. Fleur and Cassandra watched in disbelief. Contrary to their expectations of flying debris and chaos, the curse seamlessly penetrated the pier as if it were an illusion. The solid appearance of the pier was deceiving. It was as though it didn't exist at all. As the spell disappeared into the pier, a surprised exclamation echoed. "Blake?" Cassandra, piecing together the events, recalled the protective magic they encountered in the alley and the magical barrier at platform 9 3/4. Realizing the similarity, she dashed towards the pier, passing through it as if it were air. Fleur, taken aback by this revelation, exclaimed, "So, this was a concealed protective enchantment?" Her frustration was palpable. "Were you keeping this a secret from me? Wait for me." Without hesitation, she followed Cassandra's lead, plunging into the hidden space. Upon entering, Cassandra was greeted by the sight of Blake, donning a red and blue cape, a corner of which was still emitting wisps of white smoke. "Cassandra Fleur, what brings you here?" Blake asked, lowering the cape he had used as a shield. Suddenly, he seemed to realize the gravity of the situation. "Get out! Quick!" What? I didn't mean to attack you." Cassandra mistakenly thought her spell had inadvertently targeted Blake, prompting his urgent reaction. "Blake, I've been looking for you. You owe me an explanation," Fleur interjected, undeterred by Blake's urgency. She was determined to uncover the truth about her sister. 2. 1. The secret Elm is open, announced a disembodied voice, seemingly from a system. Blake sighed, his expression a mix of resignation and fatigue. "Worry, speedrun, no more." A faint blue light enveloped them, drawing surprised gasps from both Cassandra and Fleur as they looked at their bodies, now glowing with an ethereal light. An unexplained force pulled them towards Blake, their feet leaving the ground as they floated involuntarily towards him. The sequence of events unfolded with a blend of magic, mystery, and unexpected alliances, setting the stage for an adventure that none of them could have anticipated. Chapter 209. Shame Non-Existent. Welcome to Hell. Blake was engulfed in a sudden burst of blue light emanating from his chest, which seemed to draw everything around him towards its center. Among the chaos, he noticed Fleur and Cassandra being pulled into the vortex. Blake, feeling a mix of confusion and resignation, spread his arms wide, choosing not to resist the pull. He had discovered this secret place on his own, and had even taken the time to set up hidden magical protections around it. Thus, he was baffled as to how Fleur and Cassandra had managed to find him, especially at the precise moment he was about to teleport into the secret realm. What puzzled him even more was the timing of their arrival. It seemed they had arrived quite early. Had he delayed opening the secret realm, or if the realm didn't require a focused injection of magic, he might have spotted the two girls in advance and changed locations. But now, caught in the blue light of the secret realm, it was as if they had signed a magical contract, compelling them to venture into the secret realm together. Blake lamented internally, "I wanted to enjoy this experience by myself." Meanwhile, the two girls, drawn by the blue light, were suddenly pulled towards him, causing Blake to wince as they collided with his chest. Now, with the two of them in his arms, their distinct scents tickled his nose. Fleur, realizing she was in Blake's embrace, immediately tried to push him away. However, under the influence of the faint blue light, she found herself unable to break free, as if she were metal attracted to a magnet. "You bastard! What have you done?" she exclaimed. "Ding! Frightened emotion detected." A voice announced, followed by, "Ding! Reward, a golden treasure chest." Blake could only sigh as the blue light gradually enveloped the entire area, and then, just as suddenly, disappeared. The bridge hole was now empty, with only dust slowly settling to the ground, as if nothing had happened. When Blake opened his eyes again, he was greeted by an unfamiliar purple sky. He had never seen a sky like this before. Realizing it was not the time for leisure, given the unsafe environment, he struggled to his feet, noticing that the girls were beginning to stir. "Ahem," he cleared his throat. "Where are we?" Fleur asked, standing up first and looking around in horror. This place was nothing like the bridge hole they had been in moments ago. The ominous feeling it gave off, with its purple sky, dark land, hot temperature, and the lingering smell of sulfur, made it seem like they were in hell. Blake, now on his feet with Cassandra standing beside him, her cheeks flushed, also took in their surroundings. "Blake, where have you taken us?" Fleur demanded, looking at her wrist bracelet in shock. She had tried to locate her parents, but to no avail. It was as if they were cut off from the outside world by magic. Blake raised his hands in a gesture of innocence. "I don't know where this is either," he admitted. It was a random copy of various worlds stitched together into a small, ultimate realm filled with environments, monsters, and treasures. "But one thing I'm sure of," he continued, "is that we are no longer in our original world." Fleur was nearly driven to madness by this revelation. "Why did you bring me here?" What the hell is going on? Blake responded somewhat helplessly. Please understand. I was merely in the bridge hole, opening this world. I even set up a multitude of occult magic at the entrance. How could I have known you would still manage to break in like this? Can you really blame me for this? Fleur was left speechless. Indeed, it was not entirely Blake's fault. Rushing to find Blake, Cassandra couldn't contain her frustration. Blake, what on earth is happening here? She demanded. Blake, looking somewhat helpless, explained, It's an adventure, Cassandra. Remember? I mentioned wanting an adventure during the vacation on the train. I stumbled upon this fragment of a world that allows entry into an unknown realm. I was just about to explode it when you arrived, inadvertently getting involved. Cassandra stared at him in disbelief. You found a strange world fragment and decided to explore it alone? What if you never returned? Didn't that concern you? Blake shrugged. It's the essence of adventure. There's no adventure without risk. Cassandra was momentarily lost for words. How could he be so recklessly adventurous? Furong, clenching her teeth in frustration, asked, Then how do we leave this place? Leave? Blake pointed towards a sinister-looking center in the distance. Over there. It has a similar aura to the world fragments I've encountered before. So, if we want to leave, that's probably where we need to go. Furong eyed the central area, where dark mist swirled ominously. Are you sure that's the way? Not entirely, Blake admitted with a shrug. He genuinely wasn't sure. The complexity of this secret realm made it difficult to predict where the final challenge lay. They would have to explore methodically, a task made more challenging with additional companions. Furong felt a surge of anger towards Blake. If they couldn't escape, she would never see her family or her beloved sister again. The thought brought tears to her eyes. I don't want to spend my life trapped in this place, she sobbed. Blake interjected. Actually, if we don't find a way out soon, we might not be stuck here forever. We could die from lack of food and water first. This place doesn't seem to offer any sustenance. Fleur glared at him, tears streaming down her face. Suddenly, Blake received a notification. Ding! Angry emotion detected. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining a golden treasure chest. Blake, somewhat embarrassed by the timing, tried to lighten the mood. So, Mademoiselle Delacour, shall we try to find a way out together? Or would you prefer to stay here and face starvation? Or worse, become prey to the monsters of this world? At the mention of monsters, Furong quickly wiped her tears. Monsters? There are monsters in this forsaken place? Blake pointed to a large, dark heap nearby. If I'm not mistaken, that's likely the droppings of some creature. Where there's excrement, there are definitely monsters. I suggest we stick together. None of us wants to be eaten alive, right? Furong shuddered, biting her lip in silence. It seemed they had no choice but to venture together. Cassandra observed the dynamics between Blake and Fleur, realizing their relationship wasn't what she had initially thought. This realization calmed her. What's our next move? She asked. Blake, with a determined gesture, pointed towards the area shrouded in the darkest mists. We head to the central area. It looks the most dangerous, but it's our best bet. Wait a minute, Furong interjected, her voice laced with worry. The creatures that thrive in such an environment must be incredibly dangerous. Are we, mere apprentice wizards, truly capable of reaching our destination safely? Fleur echoed her concerns, highlighting the perilous nature of their undertaking. Should we perhaps discuss our strategy and make some preparations before proceeding? Cassandra suggested, her voice tinged with apprehension. This place seems fraught with danger. Blake couldn't help but laugh, a sound that seemed out of place in the tense atmosphere. What's so amusing? Cassandra demanded, her frustration evident. Don't you realize the peril we're in? Considering there are only 3 of us, it's prudent to be cautious, Fleur added, her gaze scanning their surroundings. There's evidence of recent activity from an unknown creature nearby. It's only a matter of time before it discovers us, 3 vulnerable, easy targets. The stark reality of their situation, the possibility of imminent death, unsettled Cassandra deeply. I understand your concern, Blake finally said, his tone more serious. But who said we were only 3? Fleur looked puzzled. What kind of preparation could possibly make a difference? Do you think setting up a few more tents or having extra food will help us? Before she could finish her thought, a massive white tiger materialized in front of her, its presence commanding and majestic. The tiger surveyed its surroundings before affectionately nuzzling Blake's chest. Cassandra gasped in surprise, her eyes locked on the creature. Something about the tiger's gaze struck a familiar chord. That roar! Those eyes! You're Xiaobai! She exclaimed, recognizing the once small and clingy white cat that had now transformed into this formidable beast. Fleur, still trying to process the sudden appearance of the white tiger, began, "Even with an extra white tiger, I don't see how." Her words trailed off as Blake summoned more creatures. With a flick of his wrist, several orbs flew into the air and burst open, revealing a collection of magical beasts. A fiery red bear landed with a thud, its gaze meeting Blake's as a smirk that seemed almost human played across its face. Behind the bear, a behemoth adorned with spikes and a metallic mask appeared, followed by an array of other magical creatures. A venomous leopard, a chimera, a horned camel, and a vibrantly colored giant spider. Fleur stood in awe, her eyes wide as she took in the sight of the formidable magical animals arrayed before them. The fiery red bear, the venomous leopard, the chimera, the horned camel, the colorful giant spider, she murmured, her voice a mix of fear and fascination. "Ding! Shocked emotion detected," a voice announced, followed by, "Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining a golden treasure chest." Blake spread his arms wide, a proud smile on his face as he addressed his assembled companions. "My friends, welcome to our new hunting grounds," he declared with a sense of grandeur. "Let the hunt begin." The transformation of the scene from a tense discussion of their precarious situation to the unveiling of Blake's secret arsenal of magical creatures not only shifted the dynamics of their group, but also set the stage for an epic adventure. With Blake's menagerie at their side, the trio was no longer vulnerable, but a formidable force, ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. Chapter 210, Fleur, I have never felt so safe in my life. Blake turned to face a visibly shocked Fleur. "What do you think now, Miss Delacour? Do you still consider us weak?" Fleur, surrounded by an array of fierce and magical creatures, couldn't hide her astonishment. Despite the fear instilled by the predatory aura emanating from these beasts, her overwhelming emotion was shock. All these powerful creatures are under Blake's command? How is that possible? She wondered silently. Among them were creatures she had only read about in books, like the horned camels, venomous leopards, and chimeras, all known for their dangerous nature and classified as XXXX-level creatures due to their ferocity and untamable reputation. Yet here they were, seemingly tamed. Her gaze then fell upon a particularly colorful spider, causing her to cover her mouth in disbelief. Despite its vibrant appearance, its characteristics unmistakably identified it as an acromantula, another XXX-level creature. "Mademoiselle Delacour?" Blake's voice pulled Fleur from her daze, his smile gentle and inviting. Regaining her composure, Fleur observed Blake standing confidently among the formidable creatures, an absurd yet undeniable reality unfolding before her. "So, these are your pets?" she inquired, her voice betraying a hint of nervousness despite her efforts to remain composed. "No, I prefer to call them my friends, Mademoiselle Delacour," Blake corrected her with a warm tone. "You've seen for yourself how extraordinary they are. You should feel at ease." Fleur found herself nodding, a sense of security washing over her. Surrounded by these powerful beasts, she realized she had never felt safer. Blake continued, "With that settled, there's no need for apprehension. Let's treat this journey as an adventure into another world. Though I had planned to undertake this journey alone, your presence here changes things." Approaching the acromantula named Xiao Kai, Blake gestured for it to come closer. The spider, now larger than a carriage, obediently lowered itself, allowing Blake to climb onto its back. With a flick of his wand, Blake transformed the floating spider silk into a white blanket and a pergola atop Xiao Kai, creating a comfortable seating area. "Come join me," he invited, looking at Cassandra and Fleur. Cassandra, visibly excited by the prospect, climbed onto Xiao Kai without hesitation and took a seat next to Blake. Her excitement was palpable, clearly thrilled by the novelty of riding a giant spider. Fleur, not wanting to be outdone and overcoming her fear of large spiders, followed suit. She found a spot on the opposite side of the pergola, maintaining a distance from Blake, who seemed unfazed by the arrangement. With everyone settled, Blake signaled for Xiao Kai to stand. "Let's set off," he announced, and the group began their journey swiftly. Blake then attempted to summon a blue bird, adding another magical element to their extraordinary adventure. A faint blue phoenix materialized on Blake's arm, eliciting a joyful exclamation. "Ah, great, I was worried I couldn't summon you in this world," Blake said, his voice filled with happiness. The phoenix chirped in response, seemingly conveying a message. "What? You've been in my suitcase the entire time, and you found the conditions inside almost unbearable?" Blake realized his oversight and quickly retrieved a large suitcase from the spacious pocket of his levitation cloak. Upon opening it, he released his enormous owl, which regarded him with a haughty and resentful gaze. "Okay, no need to be angry. Why don't you and Ching Vav scout ahead?" Blake suggested, attempting to smooth things over. However, before he could finish his sentence, the giant owl took off in a huff. The young phoenix, Chingv, pecked Blake's hand affectionately before soaring into the sky. Fu Rong, who was observing from a short distance away, watched in astonishment as the blue phoenix perched on Blake's arm. Its long tail feathers nearly brushed against her, allowing her to see it clearly. "Blake, what kin of bird was that? It looked like a phoenix," Fu Rong asked, her curiosity piqued. Although she had never heard of a blue phoenix before, the magnificent bird on Blake's arm was unlike any she had encountered. To Fu Rong's surprise, Blake nodded with a smile and confirmed, "Yes, that blue bird is indeed a phoenix." His casual admission sent a wave of shock through Fu Rong. "A phoenix? Blake has tamed a phoenix? But aren't all phoenixes supposed to be red, reborn from ashes?" She wondered, puzzled by the sight of the beautiful blue bird. "The blue bird is a rare frost phoenix," Blake explained with a hint of pride. "It's a bit different from the traditional fire phoenix, but it's knowledgeable about the various phoenix orders, though the feeling might not be mutual among them." Fu Rong's astonishment only grew as Blake's explanation clarified her confusion. Meanwhile, Blake's mood was lifted by the arrival of several silver treasure chests, a reward for his achievements. Fu Rong couldn't help but compare her own accomplishments at the age of 11 with Blake's. While her greatest achievement might have been topping her grade in test scores, Blake was surrounded by powerful magical creatures, including an acromantula that behaved as docilely as a lamb under his command. You are incredible. Not even the world-renowned Mr. Newt Scamander could achieve what you do," Fu Rong admitted, despite her lingering resentment towards Blake. She had never witnessed such an extraordinary first-year wizard, and the protection of these magical animals gradually eased her fears. It was then that Fu Rong remembered her original reason for seeking out Blake. "Blake, my sister Gabrielle, has been incessantly asking to see you since our last encounter," she said, a hint of discomfort in her voice. "Can you explain what you did to her? It's unusual for someone to become so attached after meeting for less than an hour." Blake felt a twinge of embarrassment. He had researched the matter and discovered that a Pokeball couldn't directly influence someone with a quarter Vila blood, like Fu Rong. However, Gabrielle, being younger and with undeveloped mental defenses, was inadvertently influenced by the Pokeball. Blake knew he couldn't reveal the truth to Fu Rong, fearing her reaction if she learned her sister had been tamed by him. Choosing his words carefully, Blake began to craft a response, drawing on his experience to navigate the delicate situation. Blake possessed a unique magical affinity for creatures, a talent that allowed him to befriend even the most formidable magical beings. "The reason I can form bonds with so many powerful magical creatures," Blake began, his voice trailing off as he glanced at Fleur, "might be linked to the day Gabriel and I met. It seems my ability was somehow reactivated." He paused, noting the change in Fleur's expression as her brows furrowed in thought. Blake understood the delicacy of the topic at hand, especially when it touched upon personal matters like the Vila heritage of Fleur and her sister Gabrielle. He chose his words carefully, allowing Fleur to draw her own conclusions without explicitly mentioning their Vila blood. "This isn't entirely my fault," Blake continued, hoping to clarify his position. "Even a creature as fierce as a leopard can become a friend under my influence. Gabrielle, being young and inexperienced, was perhaps more susceptible to my aura." Fleur listened intently, her initial frustration giving way to understanding. Blake's innate ability to attract magical creatures, including those with Vela blood, had inadvertently caused Gabrielle to develop an attachment to him. It was an aura beyond his control, one that even Fleur found strangely compelling. "I think I understand," Fleur said, her smile tinged with resignation. "But is there a way to reverse this effect?" Blake nodded, outlining his plan. "I'll speak to Gabrielle once more, urging her to move on. After that, I'll avoid meeting her, hoping she'll eventually forget about me." Fleur agreed, recognizing that Blake's willingness to address the issue and propose a solution had significantly improved her opinion of him. As a result, she found herself unconsciously drawn closer to him, a shift that did not go unnoticed by Cassandra, who watched the entire exchange with a mix of curiosity and concern. Cassandra bit her lip, observing Fleur's gradual approach towards Blake. The dynamics of their interaction hinted at a complex web of emotions and magical influences, underscoring the unpredictable nature of magical affinities and the challenges they posed in the wizarding world. Chapter 211, A Gentle Reminder. Don't erect walls, they easily crumble. Fleur's demeanor towards Blake had noticeably softened, a change she herself hadn't fully acknowledged. The distance between them was gradually shrinking. After all, Blake, being a day druid, held an allure for all magical creatures, acting like a magnet. Fleur, with her quarter Vela blood, was naturally drawn to him. Cassandra, perceptive of this subtle shift, made it a point to sit between Blake and Fleur, whether intentionally or not. Blake, for his part, had made ample preparations for their journey. While riding on Xiaokai's back, he had even set up a small coffee table in front of them, complete with a jug of cold juice and an assortment of food. Snacks, predominantly sourced from a convenience store, made up the bulk of their provisions. Despite the inherent dangers of their expedition, Blake's approach made it seem leisurely, a testament to his strength and confidence. More importantly, he was under no obligation to clear this particular dungeon to exit. Should they encounter insurmountable danger, he could simply opt out, withdrawing everyone and everything intact, though it would mean failing the challenge. Given the unique, one-time nature of this dungeon, emerging from the diamond treasure chest, that would be regrettable. However, Blake felt the likelihood of facing an unbeatable boss was slim. As the trio engaged in light-hearted conversation and snacking on Xiaokai's back, a gray shadow suddenly swooped down, landing in Blake's hands. After delivering its message, the proud giant owl ascended back into the sky. Blake signaled for the team to halt. "What's wrong?" Cassandra inquired, curiosity piqued. "Nothing much. We've just encountered some enemies," Blake replied with calm assurance. Fleur and Cassandra's expressions tensed immediately. The prospect of facing otherworldly monsters, potentially beyond the capabilities of XXXX-level magical creatures, was daunting. "The enemies are just beyond that hill," Blake informed them. Around them, Blake's friends roared in anticipation. "Don't worry, my friends, it might not be your turn to play just yet," Blake reassured them. "These enemies are too weak." As the team resumed their journey and crested the hill, both girls gasped in shock. Cassandra, in a moment of fear, clutched Blake's hand. Cassandra, relax," Blake said soothingly. "Though they may look intimidating, they're merely a few zombies." Indeed, behind the hill were hundreds of zombies, their iron-blue skin, long fangs, sharp claws, and maggots burrowing through their flesh enough to unsettle anyone. Blake hadn't anticipated that the system would assign him such an easily manageable foe. To others, these zombies might pose a significant threat, but to Blake, a necromancer, they were nothing more than a source of materials. A piercing roar signaled the zombies' awareness of Blake and his party. In an instant, hundreds of zombies charged at them with surprising speed. Blake, however, remained unfazed. Raising his left hand towards the oncoming horde, he whispered, "Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, scatter!" In the blink of an eye, the once menacing zombies turned to dust, dissipating into the air. The tumultuous roars were replaced by serene silence. Blake casually dusted off his hands, then turned to see Fleur and Cassandra staring at him, mouths agape in astonishment. "If I were you," Blake began, a hint of amusement in his voice, "I would close my mouth. Surprises like these are just the beginning." I sealed my lips tightly and swiftly cast a bubblehead charm on myself. Otherwise, we might end up inhaling the dust those zombies turned into, I noted. The two girls beside me quickly followed suit, casting the charm on themselves. It was impressive, considering their age. The bubblehead charm is typically taught in the senior years of magical education. These girls clearly came from families with strong magical backgrounds. Blake, with a casual wave of his hand, conjured a transparent, magical berry that enveloped the entire gazebo, effectively shielding us from the outside dust. Once we resumed our journey, Fleur, with a mix of curiosity and astonishment, finally voiced her questions. How did you manage that, turning so many zombies to ashes with just a wave of your hand? Blake responded with a modest smile. It's nothing extraordinary. I just happen to know a few effective countermeasures against such creatures. But honestly, even without that knowledge, our team could have handled those zombies without any trouble. His confidence wasn't misplaced. The ferocious beasts accompanying us were not only powerful in their own right, but were also equipped with gear that Blake had prepared for them. However, Blake felt a twinge of disappointment regarding the loot, or rather the lack of it. Perhaps the zombies were too weak, or maybe his methods were too effective, inadvertently destroying any potential loot along with the zombies. As Blake pondered over the missed opportunities for loot while sipping his juice, Fleur decided not to press further. Everyone has their secrets, after all. The journey continued, but something felt off to Blake. According to the system, this dungeon was supposed to be dangerous, yet all they had encountered was a single wave of minor zombies. Without monsters, how could he acquire new equipment, tame magical creatures, or gather materials for alchemy and potion making? Scratching his head in frustration, Blake mused, It's strange. My beasts could easily take down any creature that dares to approach us. Ah, I see the problem now. He realized that the intelligence of the creatures in this world meant they would naturally avoid confronting such a formidable team. After some contemplation, Blake decided to recall his menacing-looking beasts into their pokeballs, leaving only the innocuous-looking Xiongda and their means of transportation. Fleur watched in disbelief. What are you doing? She couldn't fathom why he would seemingly weaken their defenses. This team is too intimidating. No enemy dares to approach us. So, to invite some challenge. Blake explained, his reasoning only causing Fleur's anxiety to spike. The thought of deliberately attracting monsters was unthinkable to her. Why would you do that? She asked, her voice tinged with fear and confusion. It was understandable. Facing potential attacks from monsters at any moment was a daunting prospect for anyone, let alone a teenage girl. Blake sighed. I came here to explore the other world. Without any danger, what kind of adventure would that be? I'm actually quite excited about the potential loot we could get from these encounters. Fleur bit her lip, looking at Blake with a mix of admiration and concern. You really are a bit of a madman. Before Blake could respond, Cassandra chimed in with a smile. She's right. You are a bit of a madman. But then again, who else would venture into an unknown world alone? Blake, accepting the title with a shrug, replied, Well, maybe I am just a little crazy. He didn't bother to defend his actions further. After all, he hadn't come to this world to play it safe. Choosing this location for a vacation was indeed the right decision by Blake. After dealing with the beasts, Blake and his group found themselves under the watchful eyes of unseen observers. Even Xiongda, the usually calm creature, growled uneasily. Cassandra and Fleur, feeling increasingly afraid, huddled together on Xiao Kai's back. In contrast, Blake seemed relaxed, as if on a leisurely outing. He had dismounted from Xiao Kai and was busily collecting seeds and data from the peculiar plants they encountered deeper in the wilderness. Cassandra and Fleur, now seated on Xiao Kai, were silent. Their earlier casual sipping of juice now ceased. Cassandra sat with her legs tightly pressed together, a slight tremble betraying her nervousness, while Fleur bit her lip, her gaze fixed elsewhere, her legs twisting restlessly. Both girls glanced at Blake, who was engrossed in his task below, their cheeks flushing and eyes filled with a mix of embarrassment and panic. After Blake finished collecting samples from another unique plant, he paused and looked up at the two girls on Xiao Kai's back, signaling them to wait. He mentioned needing a moment to attend to a personal matter, hinting at finding a secluded spot behind a nearby hill. Fleur quickly called out to him, her voice tinged with hesitation. Blake, misunderstanding their silence for embarrassment about a natural need, encouraged them to simply come down and take care of it, oblivious to the real fear gripping them, the fear of being attacked by a monster in such a vulnerable moment. Despite the awkwardness of having a boy accompany them, Cassandra and Fleur's request for Blake's presence spoke volumes of their trust in him for safety in this unpredictable environment. Blake, initially hesitant, realized the gravity of their fear and decided to assist them. With a flick of his wand and a muttered incantation, he transformed the ground into a makeshift toilet enclosed by a wall, providing a semblance of privacy and security. The girls, now visibly relieved at the sight of this transfigured toilet, thanked Blake for his thoughtfulness. He casually warned them about the temporary nature of the structure, advising caution to avoid collapsing the mud walls, a comment that earned him a playful rebuke from the grateful yet embarrassed girls as they entered the makeshift facility. Blake's actions not only addressed an immediate need, but also reinforced the bond of trust and camaraderie within the group, showcasing his resourcefulness and sensitivity to the comfort and safety of his friends in the wild and unpredictable environment they had ventured into. In the cramped, simple bathroom, Blake scratched his head, a look of aggrieved innocence on his face. "What's the matter? I was just kindly reminding you, in case it arrives." "You still say." The response came, tinged with embarrassment and frustration. Blake's attempt at a helpful reminder had clearly backfired, leaving the atmosphere charged with awkwardness. The red faces around him spoke volumes, indicating his words had not been as well received as he had hoped. He had meant to be helpful, to prevent any potential embarrassment for his friends, but his approach had evidently missed the mark. Trying to salvage the situation, Blake searched for the right words, hoping to ease the tension. "Look, I didn't mean to embarrass anyone. It's just that sometimes these things can catch us off guard, and I thought it'd be better to be prepared." His explanation hung in the air, a sincere attempt to smooth over the ruffled feelings. Blake's concern was genuine. He had only wanted to look out for his friends, even if his method had been a bit clumsy. The simple bathroom, usually a place of quick in-and-out visits, had suddenly become a stage for a lesson in tact and timing. Chapter 222, Pluto's Pet? I Want It. Blake watched them enter before casually pulling out a licorice wand from his pocket and popping it into his mouth. At that moment, Xiongda ambled over, eyeing the candy in Blake's mouth with a look of longing. "Oh, you're a bear. You can't have candy. It's too sweet for you," Blake remarked. "Whoa, can this candy really be sweeter than honey? I can consume 5 liters of honey," Xiongda protested. With a sigh, Blake reluctantly offered a licorice wand to Xiongda, who eagerly accepted it. The bear crunched on the candy, clearly not impressed. Oh. This isn't tasty at all. It's too bland. I haven't had anything truly delicious in a while. Next time, I'll treat you to some sweet wild honey. But I can't find it on my own," Xiongda grumbled. "Did you forget that I was the one who gave you all that honey?" Blake leaned against Xiongda's fluffy body, stretching languidly. Suddenly, his gaze shifted towards a distant hillside, a spark of excitement lighting up his face. "Xiongda, get ready. Our adventure is about to begin." After a moment of feigned weakness, a creature finally revealed itself. Xiongda glanced towards the hillside, spotting a massive beast, over 2 meters tall and 1 meter long, squatting like a dog. This creature was a bizarre amalgamation of animals. It had the head of a crocodile, the upper body of a lion complete with a mane, and the lower body resembled that of a hippopotamus, complete with a thick crocodile tail. Meanwhile, Xiongda was still muttering about the licorice wand. "Whoa. It looks so hideous, yet so frail. I bet I could take it down with one swipe, don't you think?" Blake activated his expert knowledge, instantly gaining a clear understanding of the surrounding environment and the positions and movements of nearby creatures. "Don't underestimate it, Big Bear. We're not facing just one opponent. It appears to be a pack animal," Blake cautioned, his senses picking up the presence of 50 to 60 similar creatures behind the hill. Even with your advanced armor, charging in recklessly could be dangerous. Blake's confidence in his own creations, including the armor he designed for Xiongda, was unwavering, yet he knew they were up against formidable foes. His attention momentarily drifted to Cassandra and Fleur, who were dealing with personal matters in the nearby cabin. Ahem. Ah, I didn't mean to peek, Blake stammered, scratching his head. Oh. Boss, you're blushing, Xiongda teased. It's nothing. Let's focus. They're approaching. Blake quickly redirected the conversation, readying for battle. Whoa, leave it to me. They're just a bunch of weaklings, Xiongda confidently responded, standing up and donning his heavy armor with a simple pat to his chest. The armor seamlessly expanded to cover his entire body. Taking a few steps forward, Xiongda positioned himself in front of Blake and let out a provocative roar towards the approaching creature. Be cautious, Bear. I recall what this creature is, Blake advised. It's a moot, the pet of Osiris, the god of the underworld in ancient Egyptian mythology. It might be stronger than we anticipate. Blake's exceptional memory kicked in, recalling myths and legends he had read in his past life. According to those texts, a moot was a fearsome beast that devoured the hearts of sinners deemed unworthy by Osiris. This revelation made Blake marvel at the system's ability to conjure creatures from ancient myths within this randomly generated realm. Blake's anticipation for the creatures he would encounter next was palpable, and despite the amoot's somewhat unappealing appearance, he couldn't help but consider the thrill of taming one or two for fun. With a confident and commanding presence, Blake quickly set his sights on the strongest amoot among the group. He instructed Xiao Kai and Xiang Dasho, "Stay here and protect them. I'll handle this." Without hesitation, Blake charged towards the amoot. The sentinel amoot immediately noticed the seemingly frail creature reapproaching and let out a peculiar growl, signaling the rest of the amoots to gather. To the amoots, the sight of such a feeble being daring to approach was odd, yet they were confident in their ability to easily overpower it. Their attention was more focused on the fiery red bear roaring in the distance and the spider that emanated a dangerous aura. Despite their unfamiliarity with this strange world, their hunger and allegiance to Ulysses, the king of the underworld, rendered them fearless. The hillside soon swarmed with amoots, and the strongest among them let out a rallying cry. Dozens of the massive creatures charged with a thunderous force, driven by a singular desire to tear their opponents apart. Meanwhile, Cassandra and Fleur, having just resolved their personal issues, sensed the ground trembling and noticed the earthen walls of the makeshift toilet Blake had constructed for them beginning to crumble. Alarmed, they rushed out, only to be met with a shocking sight. Dozens of enormous, bizarre creatures were stampeding towards them. The terrifying aura emitted by the creatures paralyzed Cassandra and Fleur with fear, rendering them incapable of fleeing. To their astonishment, Blake, whom they deemed reckless, was not retreating, but instead advancing towards the monstrous horde. As the creatures drew nearer, Cassandra and Fleur's grip on their wands slackened, fearing the worst for Blake. However, Blake's next move took them by surprise. With a swift motion, he scattered a handful of seeds, which, guided by the levitation charm, landed precisely where he intended. Suddenly, countless black tentacles sprouted from the barren ground, weaving together to form an impenetrable barrier that halted the monster's advance. Blake had strategically deployed a large quantity of mutated devil's net seeds, which he instantaneously cultivated using archdruid magic. The monster's aggressive charge was effectively disrupted, leaving them entangled and immobilized. "Come out, men," Blake commanded, releasing a series of Pokeballs. Ferocious beasts materialized on the battlefield, ready for combat. Xiaobai, one of the summoned creatures, charged forward and with a powerful slap decapitated the head of an amoot caught in the devil's net. The sight of their comrade's demise sent the remaining amoots into a frenzy. Trapped and powerless, they felt a deep sense of indignation. Despite their formidable strength, even Blake's third-generation mutant devil's net struggled to contain them completely. Several amoots managed to tear through the net with their sharp claws, desperately fighting for their freedom. The most powerful amoot stood upright, mustering all its strength to break free from the devil's net that ensnared it. Blake stood with an air of calmness, unfazed by the chaos around him. He didn't even bother to remove the licorice wand from his mouth, his focus solely on the task at hand. His objective was clear: to slow down the enemy's advance. Relying on the devil's net to ensnare them all wasn't his plan. If that were the case, he wouldn't have needed Xiao Kai and Xiongda to stand guard over Cassandra and Fu Rong. "It's hunting time," Blake declared, a determined glint in his eyes. He extended his hands, and two glowing red energy swords materialized in his palms. With a swift motion, he brandished the swords and charged at Amut, the most formidable of the foes. The other fantastic beasts recognized that Blake had claimed the strongest adversary as his own quarry. Thus, they refrained from intervening, focusing instead on the lesser Amuts that surrounded them. Xiongda had made a valid observation. These creatures' prowess lay not in their individual combat abilities, but in their group tactics. However, the devil's net had disrupted their coordinated assaults and formations, leaving them vulnerable. Even as some of the Amuts managed to break free from the net's grasp, they were met with relentless attacks. Agcarius, the king of horned animals, crushed 3 Amuts underfoot in a single devastating charge. Meanwhile, the Xiangdu leopard, with its brutal fighting style honed in the Colosseum, savagely tore through 7 or 8 Amuts in mere seconds. Nearby, Xiao Kai and Xiongda encountered a few Amuts that had slipped through the net. Xiao Kai quickly spun a durable spiderweb around Fu Rong and Cassandra for protection, its strength surpassing that of the devil's net. After securing their safety, Xiao Kai rushed to assist Xiongda, only to find that Xiongda had already dispatched their foes. Cassandra and Fleur watched the unfolding battle in awe. Moments before, they had feared for their lives, doubting even Blake's ability to fend off the onslaught. Yet, with strategic use of the devil's net, Blake had turned the tide, enabling his team to overpower the enemy with superior tactics. Xiongda lumbered back to Cassandra and Fu Rong, fulfilling Blake's directive to protect them. "Oh, I understand. I am the mighty Xiong-Er, and I will protect you well," Xiongda seemed to say, settling down in front of the girls. Though they couldn't comprehend his vocalizations, his protective stance conveyed his intentions clearly. The presence of the massive creature provided a comforting sense of security, easing the fear in Cassandra and Fleur's hearts. Their attention then shifted to Blake, who was engaged in close combat with the formidable Amut. Xiao Tai, meanwhile, reinforced their defenses with another layer of spider silk. As the battle waned, the outcome was clear. Deprived of their coordinated tactics, the Amuts stood no chance against Blake and his formidable companions. Soon, the ground was littered with the bodies of the fallen creatures. Blake, however, was not yet satisfied. His eyes were set on capturing the strongest Amut, the one he was currently battling. In his quest to amass an army of such beasts, he sought only the mightiest specimens. With his advanced biotechnology, natural reproduction was unnecessary for expanding his forces. With a confident smile, Blake raised his swords, ready to parry the incoming strike from the dazed Amut. Despite its formidable appearance, the creature was clearly outmatched. Blake's strategy and strength had turned the tide, showcasing the power of intelligence and preparation in battle. Amut, a creature of immense power, found itself bewildered in the heat of battle. Despite its formidable strength, it was being bested by what it perceived as a far weaker opponent. The recoil from each clash was a harsh reminder that the adversary it faced was not only matching but surpassing its might. How was this possible? Moreover, Amut couldn't fathom how its attacks were being anticipated and dodged with such precision. It was as if its opponent had the ability to foresee every move before it was even made. "Your subordinates have been defeated. It would be wise to surrender now," said Blake, his voice laced with authority and confidence. He moved effortlessly through Amut's desperate assaults, his demeanor unshaken by the chaos around him. Blake's calm and strategic approach contrasted sharply with Amut's brute force and confusion. The realization that its forces had been decimated only added to Amut's growing sense of defeat. The situation was dire, and for the first time, Amut was confronted with the possibility of its own downfall. The notion that such a seemingly insurmountable entity could be brought to its knees by a single individual was both shocking and humbling. As the battle raged on, it became clear that Blake's advantage lay not just in his physical prowess, but in his ability to outthink and outmaneuver his opponent. His anticipation of Amut's attacks was not mere luck, but a testament to his skill and strategic planning. The encounter was a stark reminder that true strength is not just measured in power, but in the ability to adapt and overcome. Chapter 223, The First Ring of Power. Amut was taken aback upon hearing the creature speak to itself. How can this be, it thought. In its mind, only the great god of the underworld, Ulysses, possessed such an ability. Quickly scanning its surroundings, Amut's attack halted involuntarily. In the next moment, its body froze, realizing the creature before it was not as weak as it appeared. In fact, this being could match its own strength. Amut noticed that its clansmen, who had been teleported with it, were now all annihilated, and surrounding it and the creature were a host of strange and fierce beasts, each seemingly capable of tearing it apart. Under Hades's command, Amut had never experienced fear, but now it understood what fear truly was. Blake leaned against Xiaobai, casually tossing the sword of Emperor Weishan in his hand, which appeared to be riddled with holes. Amut, however, showed no desire to attack. "You're scared," Blake observed. Amut, understanding Blake perfectly, looked at him in horror. "Why should you be afraid? Aren't you the pets of Hades? You only need to die to return to Ulysses' command. But why do you still fear death?" Amut seemed to be focusing on Blake, but from the corner of its eye, it was surveying the environment, looking for an escape. Blake yawned, losing his patience. He took out a pokeball. "I know you want to escape, but it's useless. You can't. Just accept fate's arrangement." Master Ball. With a boom, the pokeball hit Amut on the head. Amut was surprised by the seemingly weak attack, feeling nothing. But before it could react, its body began to shrink, drawn into the small ball. It tried to run in terror, but it was too late. Creatures locked by the pokeball cannot escape. Blake's pokeball had a 100% capture rate. With a flick of his hand, the pokeball returned to Blake. He checked Amut's attributes through the pokeball and couldn't help but pout. This thing's attributes are worse than a not fully grown giant acromantula. No wonder it's not as strong as me. But Amut has a special skill, group gain. The more companions it has, the stronger its combat effectiveness. No wonder this guy got weaker and weaker. His companions were all killed, Blake mused. He put away the pokeball. Not a bad harvest. Amut is weak, but with biotechnology, creating a lot of companions for it could be interesting. Let's cultivate it first. Wait until its attributes are maximized, and then it will be the best time for replication. Such a weak creature, cultivated in the elf ball until it's time to be released in the dungeon. That will be the moment to test my biotechnology. Blake sheathed the Vishandi sword and put away his pets. Then he let out his sniffer, Dabao, who had not been released for several days. Confused by the sudden change in environment, Dabao looked around. "Go and see if they dropped any treasures," Blake instructed. Treasure hunting was Dabao's favorite activity. It jumped off the ground and began searching with its snout close to the earth. Blake signaled to Cassandra that the danger had passed, then turned to collect materials from Amut: blood, scales, flesh, hair, and bones. He packed everything into his system warehouse. These materials from a magical creature of another world might not be strong, but they certainly held value, whether for medicinal or alchemical purposes. Once we're out of the dungeon, we can begin our research, Blake thought, already planning the next steps for his newfound resources. While Blake was meticulously examining a vial of Amut's blood through a magnifying glass, Xiao Kai took the initiative to assist Cassandra and Furong by freeing them from the protective spider silk. Cassandra rushed over, her concern evident. "Are you okay? I was terrified just now." Blake, having finished collecting Amut's blood, reassured her with a grin. "Don't worry. If I can't handle a fight, I can outrun anyone. But you should know, if you see me charging into danger, it usually means one thing." Cassandra's large green eyes sparkled ever. "I've curiosity." "And what's that?" "It means the opponent is worth the challenge. Though, thinking about it, anyone who sees food in their adversaries clearly has a few screws loose," Blake joked, causing Cassandra to be momentarily speechless. The idea of monsters being considered food was bizarre to her. In her mind, facing those creatures would result in instant annihilation. "Let's take a short break before we move on," Blake suggested, signaling to his spider mount. Fleur sighed, half in admiration, half in disbelief. This guy is truly fearless. Has he never known fear? As Cassandra and Furong settled on Xiaokai's back, sipping hot tea to calm their nerves, Dabao clambered up excitedly, presenting Blake with a small, shiny object as a gift. Blake examined the gift and discovered it was a delicately crafted ring, adorned with a small, exquisite blue gemstone. Appreciating the gesture, Blake handed Dabao 2 galleons, leaving the little creature in utter shock. "What? The usually stingy boss is being generous today?" Dabao exclaimed, his eyes wide with surprise. "A double salary and real galleons, not conjured by magic? He does have a heart after all," he mused, tears of joy welling up as he tucked his earnings away. Cassandra, amused by Dabao's antics, scooped him up for a celebratory hug, which Dabao accepted without resistance. Today had been a good day after all. Blake, meanwhile, turned his attention back to the ring. It doesn't enhance any abilities. "Oh, it's a storage ring. That's quite handy," he remarked, though he was slightly disappointed by the limited space within. "Such a shame. It's practically useless to me." Storage rings were rare in the wizarding world, where most relied on bags or boxes enchanted with the undetectable extension charm for extra space. However, the ring's capacity was no more than that of a school bag, making it somewhat underwhelming for Blake, who had access to a system warehouse for his storage needs. Just as Blake was about to dismiss the ring as another item for storage, he caught Cassandra and Fleur eyeing the ring with undisguised interest. Realizing this, he feigned ignorance and loudly pondered melting the ring down for its materials, watching as both girls reacted with dismay. Cassandra balled her fists, visibly upset at the thought of such a beautiful ring being destroyed. "If you don't want it, just give it to me," she blurted out, almost simultaneously with Fleur, who shared the same sentiment. The 2 women exchanged surprised glances, realizing they had both voiced their desire for the ring at the same time. Blake, caught in an awkward moment, scratched his head, embarrassed by his earlier pretense. Cassandra crossed her arms, her frustration evident. "Of course, the ring should be mine. Why would you even consider giving it to her?" She glared at Blake, disbelief and anger mingling in her gaze. How could he hesitate in such a matter? Beside her, Fleur, usually composed and dignified, felt her patience wane in front of Blake's indecision. Despite her usual restraint, Fleur couldn't help but bristle at Cassandra's audacity. The notion that this inexperienced girl could challenge her was infuriating. Upon hearing Cassandra's claim to the ring, Fleur's temper flared. She hadn't been particularly interested in the ring initially, but Cassandra's entitlement ignited a competitive spark in her. "And why, pray tell, do you assume Blake will choose you?" Fleur retorted with a cold laugh. Cassandra shot back, confidence undimmed. "Because Blake is my friend. And what are you to him? You came seeking revenge for your sister. In my eyes, that makes you an enemy, not a contender for his gifts." Fleur, however, remained undeterred. "Blake may consider you a friend, but he owes my sister more than a mere apology. This ring could serve as a proper gesture of remorse." Their argument escalated, voices rising as they stood on either side of Blake, who found himself caught in an unexpected storm. He had only meant to tease them, not spark a full-blown conflict. Shaking his head, Blake wondered why the ring had become such a contentious issue. Little did he know, for Cassandra and Fleur, the dispute had transcended the ring itself. It was about proving a point. Sighing, Blake glanced at the ring, then at his own supreme Lord of the Rings. Despite its simple appearance, the ring's material was of exceptional quality. Inspired, Blake decided to intervene in a way only he could. As the girls continued their heated debate, he turned his attention to the ring, channeling magic into it with a touch. Under his skilled hands and the influence of the Supreme Lord of the Rings, the ordinary ring began to transform. Blake was leveraging the power of the Supreme Lord of the Rings to recast the storage ring, adapting it to the rules of this world. The process was surprisingly straightforward, thanks to the quality materials at his disposal. In no time, he had created the world's first ring of power, a ring that shared a connection with the Supreme Lord of the Rings, granting its wearer enhanced abilities. Holding the still-warm ring, Blake intervened, his voice cutting through the argument. "Listen to me for a moment. Since both of you desire this ring," he paused, placing the ring on a small end table, "let's allow the ring to choose its owner." He looked at them seriously, adding, But be warned, the bond with this ring is not to be taken lightly. Its influence will depend on the thoughts and intentions of its wearer. With that, Blake set the stage for a unique test, one that would determine the rightful owner of the first ring of power. Whoever wears this ring will be bound to follow me forever. Don't say I didn't warn you, Blake said with a serious tone. Chapter 224, Blake the Heart Piercer, Plants vs. Wolves? Ah? Despite their recent heated argument, the two girls hadn't lost their senses. So when Blake's unexpected suggestion came out of nowhere, it struck them as odd. Take you a ring and you have to follow forever? Dream on, Cassandra muttered under her breath, biting her lip. She thought Blake was trying to avoid offending either her or Fleur, resorting to a bizarre and flimsy excuse to give them an out. In her mind, the idea of selling oneself for an advantage in a skirmish was absurdly high a price. Logically, it was an offer neither should accept. Fleur shared the sentiment. Agreeing to Blake's proposal under the guise of letting the ring choose its owner would be tantamount to admitting a lifelong interest in following him. Even if such interest existed, it wasn't something to be displayed so blatantly. Observing the girls settle down, Blake wasn't surprised or disappointed by their reaction. He knew the ring's power was immense and should only be entrusted to someone utterly reliable. Moreover, he believed that power came at a price, a concept he felt necessary to impart before they committed to this path. If you change your mind, you can come to me anytime, Blake said nonchalantly, pocketing the ring. His actions effectively diffused the tension, but it also left an unresolved strain between Cassandra and Fleur, leading to a palpable mutual disdain. The seating arrangement shifted as a result, with Fleur moving to sit on the opposite side of Blake, placing him squarely between the two. Blake, sipping his drink with a hint of regret, wished the girls could have sat closer together. Subsequently, Blake and his group faced several attacks, all from undead creatures. While these encounters were more nuisances than threats to Blake, he lamented the lack of valuable materials these foes provided, save for some peculiar bone meal and venom. As night fell, Blake decided against pressing on, choosing instead to camp on a defensible hillside. Preparing fortifications in such a perilous world necessitated the use of his extraordinary plants. He began with the mutated devil's snare, creating a thick wall around the campsite as the first line of defense. These plants, previously used in battle, were now repurposed for protection. The second line of defense consisted of plants so bizarre that both Hibiscus and Cassandra were taken aback. Blake planted them while muttering names like potato mines and cherry bombs, prompting an instinctive caution towards these peculiar plants from the girls. For the third line of defense, Cassandra recognized the mutated poisonous tentacles she had helped cultivate. The campsite, now fortified with an array of unique and deadly plants, stood ready to repel any threats, showcasing Blake's strategic use of his botanical arsenal in this dangerous world. Pea shooter, cactus shooter, Cassandra had never even heard of them. She surmised that these novel plants must have been cultivated by Blake in his greenhouse. However, since he hadn't mentioned them, Cassandra decided not to inquire further at the moment. She thought it best to wait until Furong was not around to distract them before asking. After recalling Bluebird and Giant Owl, Blake placed several pots of enormous purple mushrooms atop the hillside. Upon stroking them gently, a thick purple mist emanated from the tops of the mushrooms, gradually condensing into clouds that slowly ascended. With a wave of his magic wand, Blake gathered these clouds, effectively shrouding the entire hillside airspace in a protective fog. Blake's rapid deployment of these plants fortified the hillside thoroughly in less than 15 minutes. The ground was secure, and even airborne enemies would find it impossible to penetrate the poisonous fog generated by the mushrooms. These preparations were among the most crucial Blake had made for their journey to the otherworld, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in his work. However, Blake's sense of accomplishment was somewhat dampened upon his return. Despite his efforts, he found that the two girls, Fleur and Cassandra, were still struggling to even set up the tent's basic structure, their bickering hindering any progress. Blake sighed, wishing for Nagini's efficiency. She would have had the tent up and dinner cooking by now. Resigned to the fact that he would have to take over, Blake intervened to prevent further chaos. "Forget it. Let me handle this. I have no intention of sleeping under the stars tonight, nor do I fancy spending the night in a cramped suitcase," Blake remarked, somewhat exasperated. With a light tap of his wand on the tent frame, the structure began to assemble itself automatically, and in no time, a tent towering over 3 meters tall stood before them. Fleur and Cassandra, feeling somewhat sheepish for their earlier ineffectiveness, watched in awe as Blake effortlessly completed the task. They had seen him exhaust himself, setting up defenses at the mountain's base, and now he had to attend to the tent as well. They wanted to apologize, but Blake dismissed their concerns with a wave of his hand, insisting that he would have had to manage on his own regardless. Upon entering the tent, both Fleur and Cassandra were taken aback by the spacious interior that belied its modest exterior. The tent boasted hundreds of square meters of space, with several rooms for rest, a fully equipped kitchen, bathroom, and even a sizable swimming pool. The luxurious interior was a stark contrast to the unassuming exterior, and despite their earlier tensions, both women couldn't help but smile in satisfaction. Pleased with the accommodations he had provided, Blake, feeling a bit weary, suggested, "You must be hungry. How about some steak for dinner?" Considering the simplicity and speed of preparing steaks, it seemed like a good choice. "Or, let me cook," Huang Rong offered, with Cassandra echoing the sentiment. They felt guilty for not having contributed much to the journey so far, especially with their failure to set up the tent. Blake was initially inclined to accept their offer, but after a quick use of legilimency revealed that neither of them had any experience with cooking, he quickly dismissed the idea. Blake couldn't fathom the audacity of the two young girls. They seemed to believe that merely observing others cook was sufficient to master the art themselves. Were they not aware of the harsh reality that theoretical knowledge often falls short in practical application? "Actually, it's not as complicated as it seems," Blake interjected, a hint of excitement in his voice. "I've been wanting to test a new steak frying technique I learned recently." As the meat sizzled in the pan, a sense of contentment washed over Blake. Despite the day's busyness, this moment of cooking brought him unparalleled joy. The aroma quickly filled the air, causing Cassandra and Fleur, who were eagerly awaiting their meal, to swallow in anticipation. Blake then transferred the steak to the oven for the final touch, when suddenly a wolf's howl echoed from the mountain's base, followed by a subtle tremor that caused the teacups on the table to quiver. "Blake, are we under attack?" Cassandra asked, her voice laced with concern. Blake, unfazed, wiped his hands with a cloth. "Don't worry about it," he reassured them. He had been aware of the intruder's presence long before they neared the hillside, confident in his defensive measures. Though he appeared to be casually monitoring the oven, his senses were keenly focused on the unfolding scene below. In his mind's eye, he saw numerous dark figures launching an assault under the cover of night, most of whom were ensnared by the devil's nets, though a few managed to breach the defenses. Taking a sip of juice, Blake remained calm. "There might be some noise soon, but think of it as nothing more than thunder," he said just before a series of loud explosions signaled the activation of his potato mines and cherry bombs. As he served the perfectly cooked steaks, a cacophony of sounds from the battle outside filled the air, accompanied by distant howls. Noticing the pale faces of Fleur and Cassandra, Blake decided to block the external noise with a snap of his fingers, restoring tranquility to the dining room. Understanding their fear was natural given their youth and inexperience, he sought to comfort them. Sitting down, Blake savored a bite of his steak, pleased with the seasoning and doneness. Meanwhile, the battle outside had reached its conclusion. Fleur and Cassandra, tasting their steaks, were visibly impressed. "Delicious!" exclaimed Cassandra. Fleur, who had initially set low expectations given Blake's age, found herself pleasantly surprised by his culinary skills, which rivaled those of her family's house elf chef. "And Blake, how did you know I prefer my steak medium rare?" Fleur asked, intrigued. "It was merely a lucky guess. I tend to be quite accurate in judging people's preferences," Blake replied nonchalantly. Fleur's question prompted Cassandra to express her astonishment as well. "You remembered my preference too?" Blake offered her a knowing smile. "Of course, I'm familiar with your tastes." Cassandra couldn't hide her delight, casting a triumphant glance at Fleur, who simply rolled her eyes. They had only just met Blake. How could he already know her preference? Unaware of the silent exchange between the girls, Blake continued to enjoy his meal while keeping a vigilant watch over the hillside. He was in no rush, confident in the security of their surroundings. After savoring his steak at a leisurely pace, Blake stood up and, stepping outside the tent, released an elf ball into the night. "Don't kill it. Just pull it back when it's no longer needed," he instructed. A tiger's roar echoed into the distance, carried away by the wind. Subsequently, feeling the onset of drowsiness, the trio decided to retire for the night. Blake, in particular, quickly succumbed to sleep upon returning to his room. The tranquility of the night was gently disturbed when the door to his room creaked open, allowing a white kitten to slip inside. With agile grace, it jumped into Blake's arms, eliciting a soft meow from its throat. "Nailed it?" Blake murmured, half asleep yet acknowledging the kitten's presence. "Meow," came the reply, as if the kitten understood the question and responded affirmatively. "Well done. We'll take care of it tomorrow," Blake whispered, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth as he drifted back into a peaceful slumber, the kitten nestled comfortably in his arms. The bond between them, evident in this simple exchange, hinted at a deeper connection and a shared purpose that would unfold with the new day. Chapter 225. Accidentally Tamed a Friendly Vila. What now? Urgent advice needed. The night in the other world was peaceful, a tranquility that followed the aftermath of a recent skirmish. Blake, embracing Xiaobai, settled into bed and quickly succumbed to deep slumber. As his body rested, his soul, accustomed to its nocturnal independence, ventured forth. A book levitated in the air, manipulated by Blake's disembodied spirit. Xiaobai, momentarily opening a bright green eye, glanced at the scene before snuggling back into Blake's arms. While engrossed in his reading, Blake's attention was diverted by the sound of water from the neighboring room. Curiosity led his spirit to peer through the wall, where he caught sight of Fleur in a moment of vulnerability as she prepared for a bath. The room was bathed in an ethereal glow, leaving Blake's soul momentarily stunned. Unseen by Fleur, he witnessed her testing the water with a delicate touch. The book slipped from his grasp in shock. Blake hastily covered his eyes, but his translucent hands failed to block the view. "Ahem, this was unintentional, merely a minor mishap," he muttered to himself, spending a restless night. Come morning, Blake was the first to rise, appearing unusually spirited. Fleur, however, seemed perplexed by his evasive demeanor after their eyes met. Blake prepared a simple breakfast for three. After eating, he stepped outside the tent to address the remnants of the previous night's conflict. The air was tainted with the scent of blood. With a flick of his wand and a whirlwind clean spell, the odor was significantly reduced. Looking down the hill, Blake saw the aftermath of the battle. Hundreds of giant wolf corpses littered the ground. Remarkably, aside from expendable defenses like potato mines, his magical plants, including the newly introduced Devil's Net, remained unscathed. A faint moan caught his attention, leading him to discover a massive white wolf, gravely injured yet alive, near the tent. Recognizing the signs of Xiaobai's handiwork, Blake realized this wolf was the pack's alpha. Its survival explained Xiaobai's exhaustion the night before. Cassandra and Fleur emerged from the tent, their eyes widening at the sight below. "Blake, did your plants do all this?" Cassandra asked, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and awe. The realization that the night could unleash such dangers, including an attack by hundreds of giant wolves, was overwhelming. They were grateful for Blake's foresight and protective measures. Cassandra's interest in herbalism sparked a newfound fascination with Blake's magical plants. She resolved to learn more upon their return. Meanwhile, Fleur, drawn inexplicably to Blake, approached him. Unbeknownst to her, Blake was using druidic magic to heal the white wolf, which emitted an aura that resonated with her Vila heritage. As Blake worked to stabilize the wolf's condition, Fleur watched, intrigued by the gentle power he wielded. The moment marked the beginning of an unexpected bond, one that would intertwine their fates in ways they could not yet foresee. Blake suddenly realized that Fleur was squatting beside him, observing him closely. This prompted him to recall the events of the previous night vividly, as if he were reliving them. Blake muttered, covering his sore nose. Why are you blushing? Fleur inquired with a hint of curiosity. Oh, it's nothing. Just that squatting for too long has made my head feel a bit congested, Blake replied, choosing to remain in his squatting position, despite the discomfort. He thought to himself that sometimes being too resilient could be a disadvantage. Fleur looked at him with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. I've heard that standing on your head for too long can cause blood to rush to your head, but never from squatting. At that moment, the giant wolf, lying injured on the ground, opened one eye and fixed a fiery gaze on Blake and Fleur. It let out a series of low growls, its eyes burning with hatred. Blake had saved its life, but had not tended to their injuries, such as the deep, bone-deep scratch on its back. As a result, the white wolf, with its damaged spine, was paralyzed, capable of nothing but a fierce glare. The wolf harbored deep resentment towards these humans, blaming them for the demise of its pack. Yet, Blake remained unfazed by its animosity. He reasoned that if a creature chose to attack, it should be prepared for the consequences, including subjugation. Are you going to kill it? Fleur asked, puzzled by the presence of the white wolf, especially since the other giant wolves had fallen at the mountain's base, and this one had not sustained similar injuries. I have a better idea, Blake said with a smile, eyeing the giant wolf. I'm actually in need of a new pet. The giant wolf's throat vibrated with growls, though it was unable to open its mouth to bite. You mean to tame it? But how is that possible? Fleur was astonished, especially given the wolf's glaring eyes filled with hatred. She doubted even the imperious curse could tame such a creature. I possess a special talent, Blake began, referring to the unique ability he had previously mentioned to Fleur. I know you're skeptical, but this will be a perfect demonstration. You'll see that I wasn't lying. Blake decided to use this opportunity to dispel any doubts about his abilities, opting not to mention the more forceful methods of taming, like using a Pokeball, just yet. Cassandra also joined them, intrigued by Blake's claim. She had witnessed Blake effortlessly tame a group of bowtruckles before, but had never seen him subdue a large, fierce creature like this white wolf. With Fleur and Cassandra watching expectantly, Blake rolled up his sleeves and decided to rely on his druidic magic instead of resorting to more forceful means. He explained to Fleur that the process might take some time to show results, planning to use the Pokeball discreetly later, if necessary. Blake then closed his eyes and placed his hand on the white wolf's forehead. In the next moment, he unleashed the full power of his magic. The wolf, caught off guard by the sudden, overwhelming sensation, almost lost consciousness. As Blake's magic intensified, a faint cyan light enveloped his body, signaling the activation of his archdruid powers. Fleur watched in awe, realizing that Blake's abilities were far beyond what she had imagined. A cyan light cascaded into the head of the giant wolf like a torrential river. At the same moment, Fleur experienced a bizarre sensation. She found herself inexplicably drawn to Blake, as if the blue light radiating from his body held an irresistible allure. Despite her confusion, Fleur found herself moving closer to Blake, step by step. Meanwhile, Cassandra was intently observing the transformation of the giant wolf, noting with excitement that the beast's eyes were losing their ferocious gleam. So engrossed was she in this discovery that she failed to notice Fleur, who had now positioned herself beside Blake. With hands trembling, Fleur reached out and gently grasped Blake's arm, leaning against him. She couldn't explain why, but something about Blake's presence offered her a sense of comfort, warmth, and safety. Blake, who had been concentrating with closed eyes, felt the touch on his arm and opened his eyes to find Fleur looking up at him. He was taken aback. Damn it! This isn't about love, he thought to himself, just as the giant wolf's eyes cleared completely, signaling a pivotal moment in the taming process. Without pushing Fleur away, Blake focused his energy, his archdruid magic intensifying. The wolf's transformation was complete, and Blake sighed in relief, his magical reserves nearly depleted but successful in fully taming the beast. Cassandra's voice, sharp with anger, broke the moment. Hey, why are you holding him? She demanded, glaring at Fleur. Blake, now fully aware of Fleur's grip on his arm, recalled the moment she had leaned in. He looked at her, a mix of confusion and realization in his eyes. Fleur released his arm and turned away, her response cold. I was just feeling a bit scared. Is that not allowed? Cassandra was livid, convinced that Fleur was taking advantage of Blake's innocence. She resolved to protect him from such influences. Despite the brewing conflict between Cassandra and Fleur, Blake felt a sense of relief. Fleur's behavior suggested that nothing had fundamentally changed between them. However, when Fleur winked at him behind Cassandra's back before walking away with a blush, Blake's heart raced. Damn, what now? He thought. Although Fleur had always shown some affection for him, her reserved nature had kept her from making such bold gestures. Now, it seemed his druid magic had inadvertently increased her affection towards him significantly. Would she believe it was unintentional? Blake pondered, his thoughts interrupted as he turned his attention to the now tamed wolf, beginning its treatment. Chapter 226. Actually, you don't have to be so reserved. Blake spent another day on the hill before packing up early the next morning to continue his journey. Along the way, they faced several attacks but managed to stay safe. Surprisingly, having 2 extra burdens with him didn't slow Blake down much. Unlike the decorative heroines often seen in nonsensical films, these 2 companions were quite the opposite. They didn't wander off or unnecessarily express their opinions, which allowed Blake to maintain his pace. In fact, they even took the initiative to learn from Blake, such as how to pitch a tent and cook. These suggestions were first made by Fu Rong, with Cassandra quickly following suit. This unexpected turn of events was actually beneficial for Blake, and having 2 more people to talk to made his journey less monotonous. As Blake was lost in thought, a not-so-authentic wolf howl pierced the silence. Blake, annoyed, slapped his forehead, effectively cutting off the howl. Don't shout. Are you trying to scare all the enemies away? He scolded, looking at the source of the noise. In front of him, a husky sat with a look of wisdom in its eyes, seemingly pondering if scaring the enemy away wasn't such a bad idea after all. Blake rubbed his temples, exasperated. After taming the giant wolf, he learned its name was Fenrir, a creature from Norse mythology rumored to be incredibly powerful. Indeed, Fenrir proved to be a formidable opponent, giving Xiaobai a run for its money, despite the latter being enhanced by an elf ball. Fenrir also mentioned having the same transformation ability as Xiaobai, which led to its current, less intimidating form. Why, after transforming into a husky, did your behavior and intelligence become so erratic? Blake questioned, visibly frustrated. Do you have any idea how much the tent you destroyed last night is worth in galleons? He tugged at the husky's face, causing it to whimper in pain. Will you dare do it again? He threatened. The husky, now in tears, responded with a defiant bark before quickly scampering away, howling for mercy. In the days that followed, Blake and his companions traveled by day and camped at night, never worrying about safety with their plant defenses. Fenrir, however, was never allowed back into the tent, relegated to standing sadly at the entrance as the last line of defense. Time flew, and 2 days later, Blake realized no creature dared to approach them. Deciding to take the initiative, Blake, filled with confidence and determination, led his group of beasts in search of powerful creatures to confront. They moved faster than any scout bird, leaving no stone unturned. Eventually, after dominating the powerful creatures of this world, they arrived at the last place, exuding a strong aura, an ancient ruin resembling a Roman arena, but without a roof and surrounded by towering walls that obscured the view inside. After carefully sensing the area, Blake turned to Cassandra and Furong. This time, you stay outside. If all goes well, we should be able to leave by tomorrow. Cassandra and Furong's faces lit up with joy, relieved to be spared from the dangers that lay ahead. Having spent at least 7 or 8 days in this otherworldly realm, it was clear that their absence would have caused considerable worry among their families. Blake, feeling a sense of responsibility, casually mentioned as he began setting up camp, I believe I owe you an apology. Therefore, once we return, I'll present each of you with a gift as a form of compensation. Cassandra interjected, We got involved on our own accord. Had it not been for us, you might have already found your way out. Blake shook his head, dismissing her concern. No, you haven't hindered my progress in the slightest. But I recall you have a large black dragon, don't you? She continued. Without us, you could have easily flown here on it long ago. Cassandra was familiar with Blake's collection of fantastic creatures, having seen them at his ranch, including a black dragon that had yet to be summoned. She speculated that Blake's reluctance to use the dragon was to avoid making them feel like a burden, hence why it remained unsummoned. "You're overthinking it," Blake reassured her. "In my view, flying would mean missing out on numerous experiences along the way. Otherwise, I would have taken to the skies long ago. Besides, if I truly wished to fly, I wouldn't need a dragon. If my goal was merely to arrive here sooner, flying wouldn't be necessary." As Blake spoke, he skillfully set up the camp and took protective measures. The night in the otherworld was moonless, with a drowsy purple sky casting a strange atmosphere over the land. Standing before the camp, Blake gazed at the distant ruins, sensing the power of the creature within. He anticipated a challenging battle the following day, yet the prospect of a richer reward for overcoming it filled him with excitement. Upon returning to the tent, Blake found that Cassandra and Fleur had each prepared a dinner for him, seemingly competing even in cooking. "Fortunately, I have a good appetite," Blake commented, rubbing his stomach. Cassandra was the first to present her dish, a British delicacy known as beef Wellington, consisting of foie gras spread on filet mignon, wrapped in puff pastry, and baked. The challenge in its preparation lay in controlling the heat. Just as Blake hesitated to take the plate, Fleur's scoffing voice interrupted. "British food? Since when has Britain been known for its cuisine?" Cassandra retorted, "Why not? This dish is proof of its deliciousness." Fleur, with a smile, claimed, "Did you know beef Wellington is inspired by our French filet steak?" Cassandra was taken aback, looking to Blake for confirmation, only to see him nod in agreement. Her pride was momentarily wounded until Blake consoled her. Cuisines from around the world influence each other. There's no shame in that. Besides, beef Wellington is now considered a unique British delicacy. Encouraged by Blake's approval, Cassandra's spirits lifted. She was less concerned about the origins of the dish, and more about impressing Blake and outshining Fleur. Fleur then presented her dinner to Blake, eager to showcase her culinary skills. Standing before him, Fleur presented a dish with a hint of embarrassment. "Given the limited ingredients available, I've prepared this for you. Red wine braised beef," she explained, revealing that the red wine used was a bottle she had hidden away from her father at her mother's request, only to forget to remove it from her bag before setting out to find Blake. Blake, with a discerning palate, immediately recognized the distinct taste of the dish. It seemed to be made with a bottle of Lafite red wine from the 19th century, a treasure so rare that even Mr. Delacour would hesitate to consume it. "You used it all for this dish?" Blake asked in disbelief, his question prompted by Fleur's evident embarrassment and Cassandra's teasing remark about Fleur's multiple attempts at perfecting the dish. Offering a silent condolence to Mr. Delacour, Blake could only imagine the shock he would feel knowing such a precious bottle of wine was used in cooking. The night progressed, and while Blake's physical body rested, his soul wandered, engaging in his usual nocturnal activities. His tranquility was interrupted by the unexpected visit of Fleur, who approached his bedside with a tenderness that left Blake's soul in turmoil, questioning her intentions. Fleur's actions, however, were innocent and caring, merely adjusting Blake's covers before quietly leaving. Blake was left pondering the complexity of their relationship, recognizing that despite their close interactions, Fleur and Cassandra, both of partial Vila bloodline, could not be fully swayed or commanded through his system like his pets. Their reserved behavior contrasted sharply with their recent actions, leaving Blake to wonder about the dynamics of their growing bond. The following morning, Blake made strategic decisions regarding his companions' roles, instructing Shangda, Fennel, and Xiaokai to stay behind for protection, acknowledging their current limitations. With his protective measures in place, he ventured into the ancient ruins with his other creatures, ready to face the unknown challenges ahead. Upon entering the ruins, Blake was immediately struck by the vastness of the interior, a stark contrast to its outward appearance. The disappearance of the entrance behind him signaled the beginning of a no-return journey, heightening the tension as he prepared to confront the challenges that lay within the expansive, mysterious ruins. Blake gazed at the purple sky, a sense of urgency building within him. It had been a long while since he last summoned the great black dragon, a creature of immense power and majesty. He knew that to secure victory in the skies was crucial. At that moment, all the ferocious beasts in the vicinity turned their attention towards a khaki-colored beam of light at the center of the battlefield. Within this beam, powerful surges of energy pulsed, hinting at the presence of a formidable creature, though its exact nature remained obscured. Seizing the opportunity before the creature could fully awaken, Blake quickly set up a defensive position at a safe distance. He strategically placed plants known for their proficiency in long-range attacks, aiming to confront whatever emerged from the light. While he was aware that the damage inflicted by these plants might be minimal, he believed that every effort counted when facing a powerful adversary. Blake was not one to hold back, always giving his all in battle. As time passed, the khaki beam of light began to fade, signaling that the creature within was becoming aware of its surroundings. A peculiar roar shattered the tense silence, and in the blink of an eye, the beam vanished, revealing the monster it had concealed. Blake inhaled sharply, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Hydra? A hydra!" he exclaimed, staring at the colossal beast that now stood before him. The appearance of such a legendary creature added a new layer of complexity to the battle, challenging Blake to muster all his cunning and strength. Chapter 227. After a trip, I became a kidnapper? The Hydra, a creature steeped in the mythology of various cultures worldwide, caught Blake's attention due to its prominence in Greek mythology. This recognition came unexpectedly when the system interface, which had been dormant for a while, suddenly activated, displaying the creature's name and origin. However, the information was frustratingly sparse, lacking details on the Hydra's weaknesses or abilities. Blake couldn't help but critique the system for its lack of useful information, even though it had identified the creature as a significant challenge. System, isn't it a bit underwhelming to just label it with a boss card without any useful details? Blake mused, met with the usual silence from the system. Fortunately, his past life's interest in mythology came to the rescue, providing him with the necessary knowledge. The Hydra, also known by variations of its name due to transliteration, was a fearsome offspring of Typhon and Echidna, notorious for its regenerative ability. Destroying any of its 8 heads was futile, as they would simply regrow, all except for the central head, which, if severed, would not regenerate. However, this central head was immortal, complicating any attempt to kill the Hydra. As Blake recalled this information, he realized the daunting task ahead. The Hydra, with its massive body and 9 grotesque heads, each adorned with uniquely colored horns, seemed an insurmountable foe. Without hesitation, Blake attempted a bold move, throwing a master ball at the Hydra. However, the creature's keen instincts allowed it to counter the attack with a noxious breath, deflecting the Pokeball. Undeterred, Blake rallied his creatures, declaring, "Guys, the hunt is on." His team, equipped with top-quality alchemical gear crafted by Blake, charged at the Hydra. Despite their lack of new skills, their attributes had significantly improved, making them formidable opponents. The battle ensued with ferocity. A black dragon unleashed a torrent of dragon's breath, charring one of the Hydra's heads, while another head retaliated, only to be met with a powerful swipe that sent it reeling. Blake observed with satisfaction that the Hydra's defenses, both physical and magical, were surprisingly weak. Seizing the opportunity, Blake commanded his plant-based allies to attack. Pea shooters and watermelon pitchers bombarded the Hydra with a relentless assault, causing explosions upon impact and eliciting roars of pain from the creature. The effectiveness of the plant team's attack, particularly the explosive watermelons, puzzled Blake. The Hydra's vulnerability did not align with the expected resilience of a boss-level adversary. As Blake pondered this discrepancy, a radiant barrier suddenly enveloped the Hydra, shielding it from further attacks. The sudden appearance of this protective light mask hinted at an unforeseen twist in the battle, challenging Blake and his team to adapt their strategy against this mythical beast. Striking the mask only caused a slight ripple. Blake couldn't help but exclaim, "Such formidable defense! I knew it wouldn't be easy. So, Hydra is a sorcerer after all." Despite Hydra's physical frailty as a serpent, its transformation upon activating defensive magic was stark. Among its 9 heads, aside from the central one that stood erect, the others sprang into action. While one head maintained a protective barrier, another emitted a green light, mending its wounds. The remaining heads unleashed a barrage of potent long-range spells through the barrier at Blake and his companions. A snake head spewed a lightning bolt as thick as a bucket, striking the large black dragon in the sky with such force that it nearly plummeted to the ground. Meanwhile, the Xiangdu leopard, swiftly attacking the barrier, was encased in ice by a blast of cold air from another head. Thankfully, its alchemical armor provided sufficient defense and cold resistance to prevent it from being frozen solid. The dragon descended and breathed fire on the leopard. Wing it out. Subsequently, each of Hydera's heads cast a different spell. Beyond lightning and frost, there were flames, meteorites, and hurricanes, each attack dazzling in its execution. I knew this battle wouldn't be straightforward, Blake thought, his warrior spirit ignited. With his levitation cloak unfurled, he soared into the air, narrowly evading a giant mud hand that emerged from the ground. He then launched a massive fireball that obliterated a cluster of plants. Despite Blake's powerful assault, the barrier merely vibrated intensely, still robust enough to shield Hydera. By now, all of Hydera's injuries had healed, and the head responsible for healing joined the offensive, summoning ancient, sturdy vines from the ground. Xiaobai was caught off guard and ensnared. The divine edge is shadowless. Blake invoked a spell he had learned from the old bat, severing the largest vine binding Xiaobai. The chimera rushed to Xiaobai's aid, slicing through the vines with its sharp claws. Blake, gliding through the air with his cloak, dodged lightning strikes and meteor showers. He then raised his wand, which had been enhanced by the system, amplifying all spells cast with it. Suddenly, an ancient vegetable fairy fire blazed at the wand's tip. Blake cranked the Jixielai Xianhuo to its maximum intensity. In an instant, a colossal inferno engulfed half the sky, forcing even the large black dragon to land and engage in close combat. Observing the Gublai fairy fire's expansion, Blake grinned. "I've been waiting to do this," he declared. With a thunderous boom, the flames struck Hydera's barrier head-on. The once impervious barrier cracked under the might of the Gublai fairy fire, propelled by Blake's most potent wand. In the next moment, Hydera's body was laid bare before the beasts once more. The creatures seized the opportunity, launching a fierce assault that inflicted severe damage on Hydera's massive form. Hydera howled in agony, its heads rallying to re-establish the barrier. But Blake was determined to prevent any recovery. Stowing his wand, he crossed his arms and swept them behind him, releasing countless duplicates of himself into the sky. The spectacle was overwhelming. The supreme spell, the Shape of Icon, allowed each clone to possess the same strength as Blake himself. Hydera's 9 heads were taken aback. Even the one poised to cast a defensive spell hesitated. Blake's composure throughout the battle wasn't due to reliance on his powerful companions, but on his own formidable abilities. As the world's only supreme mage, Blake found it trivial to defeat Hydera. However, his intention wasn't to kill the beast. After all, the system hadn't specified that bosses couldn't be tamed. Collecting various fierce and exotic magical creatures was, in fact, his greatest passion. Simultaneously, all of Blake's clones acted, unleashing countless crimson chains from the sky. Each of Hydera's snake heads, which had been releasing magic, was now tightly bound. By sealing their mouths with his chains, Blake effectively neutralized Hydera's magical assaults, causing the once brilliant display of magic to vanish instantly. Observing this, the other beasts retreated to a safe distance, understanding that their master intended to capture this formidable creature. They ceased their attacks, adopting the role of spectators. Despite its struggles, Hydera, a creature of considerable magical and physical strength, found itself overpowered. Blake's numerous clones ensured the beast remained ensnared by the chains. Descending from the sky, Blake landed on Hydera's central head. Grasping its horn with his left hand, he pressed a pokeball against its face with his right. With a roar, Hydera was absorbed into the pokeball, much to the excitement of the distant beasts who celebrated their master's victory. However, Blake remained focused on the pokeball in his hand, aware that Hydera was the most formidable monster he had encountered to date. It was the first time he had seen a creature resist complete subjugation by a Pokeball. Holding the ball tightly, Blake infused it with his most potent druidic magic, finally quelling Hydera's resistance. Ding! Congratulations to the host, you have subdued the giant snake, Hydera. Ding! Congratulations to the host for perfectly clearing the secret realm. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the following rewards. As the system announced his rewards, Blake quickly collected them, unable to contain his laughter at the bounty of treasures, including 50 of Hydera's magical scales, 2-meter-long horns from its 9 heads, a random divine beast egg, and a ton of mithril, among other items. Without his system warehouse, storing such a haul would have been impossible. With the Secret Realms challenge completed, the ruins began to dissolve into specks of light. Blake, now granted the authority to leave at will by the system, landed and gathered his pets. Meanwhile, Cassandra and Fleur anxiously watched from outside the camp, relieved to see Blake emerge unscathed. "Blake, what happened in there?" Cassandra asked, her curiosity piqued by the tumultuous sounds that had emanated from the ruins. "Yeah, we heard all sorts of terrifying noises," Fleur added, her voice tinged with concern. Although entry into the ancient ruins was permitted, exit was not, yet the sounds of their chaotic interior had leaked out, filling the air with the din of lightning and meteorites. "It's nothing. It's all over now. Get ready. We can leave." Blake reassured them with a smile, signaling the end of their adventure in the ruins and the beginning of their journey outward. The girls cheerfully assisted in dismantling the tent, while Blake ventured outside to salvage the plants surrounding their campsite. Despite the loss of many magical plants during the battle, their gains were substantial, more than enough to compensate for any losses. Among the treasures were a vast array of precious materials, but most notably a fully tamed Hydera and a mythical beast egg, ready to hatch at any moment. These rewards alone made the venture into the secret realm immensely worthwhile, far exceeding the expectations for a realm accessed through a diamond treasure chest. "System, are you certain this is merely the outcome of a secret realm from a diamond treasure chest, and not one from a supreme treasure chest?" Blake inquired as he tidied up, not really expecting a response. To his surprise, the system answered, "Ding! The rewards vary depending on the number of participants in the secret realm." Ding! Since the host entered the secret realm with multiple players, it was classified as a multiplayer secret realm. Consequently, both the rewards and the difficulty were adjusted accordingly. Blake was taken aback, realizing that Cassandra and Fleur's unexpected participation might have actually been a blessing in disguise. The abundance of rewards could be attributed to their successful completion of a multiplayer challenge. "Damn, that actually makes a lot of sense. Although I found the secret realm relatively straightforward," Blake pondered. He recalled the formidable wolves, Amit, and other challenges they faced. Had it been anyone else, they might not have survived. This reflection made it clear that the difficulty had indeed been elevated, a fact that Blake, with his exceptional abilities, had barely noticed. With a new understanding of how to approach future secret realms, Blake took Cassandra and Fleur by the hands, preparing to exit the realm. Both Cassandra and Fleur were slightly surprised by this gesture, with Cassandra even blushing, but they understood it as a necessary step to leave the realm and raised no objections. With a whoosh, a faint blue light enveloped them, and in the next moment, they reappeared in the previous bridge tunnel. Blake released their hands and dispelled the cloaking spell. As they emerged, an owl swooped down, bombarding Blake with a heap of letters. Among them, he caught a newspaper, the Daily Prophet, a leading publication in the magical world, which Blake had subscribed to, ensuring he stayed informed of magical world news upon his return from the secret realm. Upon opening the newspaper, Blake was greeted by photos of Cassandra and Fleur, accompanied by a shocking headline in French. "Shocked! 2 wealthy daughters kidnapped simultaneously." The article speculated on the identity of the kidnapper, suggesting it might be an 11-year-old boy, and questioned whether this was a perversion of human nature or a moral decay. Staring at the newspaper, Blake found himself in a peculiar predicament. The article had mistakenly branded him a kidnapper, complete with a substantial reward for his capture. The irony of the situation made him half-jokingly consider turning himself in to the Aurors for the reward. Chapter 228, Grindelwald, Polygamy, Legal or Not. "Darling, don't worry, Fleur will be all right," Mr. Delacour comforted his wife, who was silently shedding tears. Meanwhile, Gabrielle blinked her large, innocent eyes, filled with a trace of concern. "Before she left that day, Fleur told me she was going to find Blake for me," Gabrielle recalled, feeling a mix of happiness and worry. Her sister had always been considerate of her wishes. However, since that day, there had been no word from Fleur, and a week had already passed. Despite her young age, Gabrielle couldn't help but fear the worst. "Could it be that boy named Blake who has taken my Fleur?" Apolline Delacour asked through her tears. "It's very likely, my dear," Mr. Delacour replied thoughtfully. Gabrielle mentioned that Fleur was looking for him, and according to her classmate Carlos, she even borrowed an alchemy tool to locate someone. Whether directly or indirectly, it seems Blake is involved in her disappearance. Apolline's sobs grew louder. "Whoever this boy is, I just hope he returns my Fleur to me." "Honey, you stay here with Gabrielle. I need to step out for a bit," Mr. Delacour announced. "Where are you going?" Apolline asked, her voice filled with sorrow. Mr. Delacour glanced at a crumpled newspaper on the table, featuring a large photo of Blake in his Hogwarts uniform, looking shyly at the camera, with smaller pictures of Fleur and another girl named Cassandra below. "Not only have we lost our daughter, but another girl has disappeared as well." Meanwhile, in a well-decorated hotel, a similar scene unfolded with Mr. Wally sitting despondently. "I always knew that kid was trouble," he muttered, his chest heaving with barely contained anger as he tossed the newspaper aside. Mrs. Wally, however, remained calm. "This is all sensationalism by the unscrupulous media. You know it's not like Blake to make such a careless mistake. If he were truly up to no good, he wouldn't get caught, much less be exposed by the newspapers." "I still believe it's just a coincidence," she continued. "Remember the potential I saw in him? If, years from now, they still hold each other in high regard, I wouldn't object to their union. It's just unfortunate timing that we visited the Delacours to post a missing person notice and sought the Aurors' help at the same time, attracting media attention." The couple sat in silence, weighed down by the situation. Cassandra was missing, and even if Blake wasn't directly involved, the circumstances could still be perilous for her. "This doesn't add up," Mr. Wally suddenly exclaimed. "Regardless of the kidnapper's motives, be it ransom or revenge, they should have contacted us by now. But there's been absolutely no word." Mrs. Wally frowned in agreement. The day she and Cassandra visited a Muggle fashion store, everything seemed normal until she stepped out of the fitting room to find Cassandra gone. Cassandra was missing. After inquiring with the clerk, all that was revealed was that she had suddenly run into the field and vanished from sight. The clerks hadn't paid much attention to her direction. Consequently, Cassandra disappeared without a trace. In a desperate move, Mrs. Worley even reached out to the Muggle police, but to no avail. The only clue was that Cassandra had been pursuing someone on the day of her disappearance. In a strange twist of fate, the eldest daughter of the Delacour family also went missing at the same time, as if she had vanished from the face of the earth. Despite utilizing alchemical tools designed for tracking, no trace of her could be found. It was as if she no longer existed in this world. The Delacour family, having undertaken similar efforts, met with the same fruitless outcome. Amidst their worry, a knock sounded at the hotel door. Mr. Worley, weary from the day's events, answered it to find a man of striking beauty, with long silver hair cascading down his back, reminiscent of a legendary elf. This appearance bore a striking resemblance to Fleur Delacour. "Are you Mr. Worley?" "The Vi?" Cedar inquired. Recognizing the man, Mr. Worley responded, "Are you Mr. Delacour?" With a forced smile, Mr. Delacour confirmed, "Yes, I believe you know why I'm here." Mr. Worley nodded, understanding the gravity of their shared situation, and invited Mr. Delacour inside. "I presume your daughter is also missing." Mr. Delacour began, only to be interrupted by Mrs. Worley, who mentioned, "So have you heard of Blake Green? He's a friend of my daughter." Mr. Delacour's interest piqued. "Do you know where he's from? The disappearance of our daughters might be connected to him." Mrs. Worley sighed, revealing, "He once shared his origins with me." Surprised, Mr. Worley asked, Why haven't you mentioned this before? I forgot, Mrs. Worley admitted, attributing the oversight to the excitement of acquiring new seeds that day. Eager for any lead, Mr. Delacour pressed, "Can you tell us where he's from?" "If he was truthful, he's from the Bleedo family," Mrs. Worley disclosed, leaving both Mr. Worley and Mr. Delacour astounded. Meanwhile, Dumbledore, with a heavy sigh, removed his glasses and polished them vigorously. A French edition of the Daily Prophet lay open on his desk, detailing the troubling events. "This young man seems to attract trouble wherever he goes," Dumbledore mused. Grindelwald's voice, unwelcome at the moment, chimed in. "Do you honestly believe Blake would stoop to kidnapping?" Dumbledore, casting a weary glance at Grindelwald, responded, "Of course, I don't believe Blake would engage in such actions." Grindelwald laughed, suggesting that even if Blake were responsible, it wouldn't pose a significant issue. He provocatively suggested that the Dumbledore family could benefit from Blake taking multiple wives, a notion that darkened Dumbledore's expression. "Are you aware that polygamy is illegal?" Dumbledore retorted, visibly upset by Grindelwald's insinuations about Blake's upbringing. Grindelwald, unfazed, argued about the technicalities of legality, further infuriating Dumbledore. "Why are you here?" Dumbledore finally asked, his patience thinning. Grindelwald, now a specially appointed ministerial advisor, smugly remarked on his freedom to roam the British wizarding world, leaving Dumbledore to lament silently as Grindelwald infiltrated the British Ministry of Magic's inner circles. With Grindelwald's assistance, Minister Fudge no longer felt the need to consult Dumbledore. Whether Blake is responsible for these incidents or not, one fact remains unchanged, Dumbledore sighed, trying to steer the conversation away from their disagreement. Blake is missing. In these circumstances, having an additional ally, especially someone as powerful as Grindelwald, seemed beneficial. "I have every confidence that he will be all right," Grindelwald asserted with conviction. "The boy is stronger than he appears." Dumbledore massaged his temples, skepticism evident in his voice. "Are you certain? I've been unable to locate him." He paused, a troubled look crossing his face. "It's as if he's vanished from this realm entirely. Even Fawkes is unable to sense his presence." Grindelwald's brow furrowed at this revelation. "Is it possible?" he asked, the gravity of the situation dawning on him. "What do you mean?" Dumbledore inquired, his interest piqued. "That Blake might truly be in another world." Grindelwald trailed off, the implications of such a possibility weighing heavily on him. Dumbledore's concern deepened. "Have you forgotten about his unique magic? He mentioned a newly awakened ability to me." "The Rift," Dumbledore said, his voice tense. He had first-hand experience with the mysterious rift from which strange magic emanated, and he was acutely aware of the formidable entity that lurked beyond it. If Blake has indeed been drawn into another world by that entity, "We're in trouble," Dumbledore concluded, worry etching his features. "Regardless, our first step should be to head to France, given that's where he disappeared," Grindelwald suggested pragmatically. "And as a guardian, I believe you're obligated to inform the parents of the missing child. Of course, if you're concerned about losing face, I can handle the conversation." Dumbledore responded with determination. "I'll go." The thought of Grindelwald interacting with the families filled him with dread. As Dumbledore reached for a piece of parchment, Grindelwald questioned him impatiently. "What are you doing? Why aren't we leaving yet?" "I need to submit an entry application," Dumbledore explained, a hint of resignation in his voice. Grindelwald's frustration boiled over. "You old fool! When has bureaucracy ever been a concern? You still think we need to apply for entry?" "Come with me," Grindelwald insisted. "I hold a diplomatic status within the Austrian Ministry of Magic. In theory, I can bring up to 3 companions into any country without the usual formalities." Dumbledore's beard quivered with indignation. "Follower," he echoed, incredulous. "Well, are you coming or not?" Grindelwald pressed. After a moment's hesitation, Dumbledore acquiesced. "Very well, let's go." Chapter 229. Blake single-handedly defeats an Auror team. "Merlin's beard, what have you done?" Blake exclaimed, staring in disbelief at the 2 Aurors sprawled unconscious on the ground before him. Moments earlier, he had been in the midst of a calm explanation, trying to convince them that he hadn't kidnapped the 2 girls. Despite their skeptical expressions, Blake hadn't believed the situation warranted violence. Yet, before he knew it, Cassandra and Fleur had taken matters into their own hands, stunning the Aurors from behind. These Aurors, considered among the elite, were caught off guard, never anticipating an attack from the very individuals they believed were kidnapped. "Blake, you can't reason with them," Cassandra said, tucking her wand away. "You're worth 500,000 galleons now. How can you expect them to listen?" Fleur, with a hint of professional analysis, added, "Money sways people. If your name is cleared, the reward disappears." Blake, frustrated, turned to Fleur. "Your point is valid, but is the Delacour family really that wealthy to offer a 500,000 galleon reward for me?" Fleur responded with a pout. "Don't look at me. The Worley family contributed 300,000 of it." Blake was dumbfounded. Cassandra sheepishly admitted, "My father must have acted on his own. My mother admires you. She would never have approved." Blake sighed, realizing the age-old truth. A father will always see the young man close to his daughter as a rival. "But I'm not some villain," he thought, then paused. "Well, in this life, I do have blonde hair." Suddenly, their confrontation was interrupted by shouts. "I found him! Fitz and Buller are down!" came the cries as a barrage of spells flew towards Blake. "Fantastic," Blake muttered sarcastically. With a bounty of 500,000 galleons on his head, these Aurors were beyond reasoning, driven by greed. Even unofficial wizarding factions had joined the fray. "Do they really think I'm so easily defeated?" Blake scoffed at the idea of fleeing. His philosophy was simple. "If you're going to attack me, be prepared to face the consequences." "Stay behind me," he instructed, his expression darkening. The Auror's reckless pursuit of the bounty had completely disregarded the safety of the supposed hostages. If not for Blake's quick casting of an iron armor charm, Cassandra and Fleur would have been hit by multiple curses. Fueled by anger, Blake retaliated. A blazing red light emanated from his wand, sweeping across the attackers. Cries of disbelief and the thuds of bodies hitting the ground followed. The Aurors, initially eager for the reward, hadn't anticipated Blake's bold resistance. Their astonishment grew as they witnessed the power with which he wielded a simple stun spell, transforming it into a formidable beam of light. Ding! Shock detected. Blake's internal system chimed, registering the emotions of those around him. Despite the annoyance of the beeps, they brought a sense of satisfaction. "What's going on?" More Aurors appeared, only to stop dead in their tracks at the sight before them. Without hesitation, Blake unleashed another wave of red light. Soon, only he and the two girls remained standing amidst a field of unconscious bodies. "It's just a stun spell. It won't kill them," Blake reasoned, unafraid of the consequences. His actions had not only protected his friends, but also sent a clear message. He was not to be underestimated. Blake stood confidently in the middle of the street, his wand raised high as he called out, "Who else dares to challenge?" The area fell into a stunned silence, the aftermath of his actions evident as those who had dared to make a sound now lay defeated. Behind him, Cassandra and Fleur watched in awe. Despite having spent nearly a week in the otherworld with Blake, they had only witnessed his combat prowess once before, when he impressively wielded dual magic swords to fend off a monster. However, the spectacle before them now far surpassed that memory. The Aurors who had initiated the attack not only failed to land a single blow on Blake, but also couldn't breach the protective barrier he had formed around himself and the two girls. It was a complete rout. Cassandra's emerald green eyes sparkled with admiration. Despite her own strength, the sight of Blake's overwhelming power stirred something within her. Fleur, whose affection for Blake was already considerable, found her admiration reaching new heights as she realized she had been protected by him throughout the ordeal. Concerned for his well-being, she quickly checked him for injuries, only to find him completely unharmed. Blake, noticing the adoration on their faces, urged them, "Hurry up and go home." He explained that by intervening, he had inevitably involved himself with the French Ministry of Magic, making it safer for him to operate alone. Moreover, he reminded them of their family's concern, highlighted by the substantial reward offered for their return. Reluctantly, Cassandra and Fleur agreed to go back, promising to explain everything to their parents. Blake then used a dimensional gate to send them safely to their doorsteps before stepping through another portal himself, disappearing from the scene. Meanwhile, in a secluded alley in Paris, Grindelwald and Dumbledore made a simultaneous appearance. Grindelwald's taunting remark about Dumbledore being his follower elicited a restrained reaction from the latter, who expressed concern about the potential shock their joint appearance might cause. They had come to speak with the Wally family, knowing that Cassandra was a close friend of Blake and a student at Hogwarts. This connection made the Wally family the most logical choice for a smooth conversation. Upon reaching the Wally's temporary residence, Dumbledore, with a polite demeanor, knocked on the door, managing to keep Grindelwald's impudence in check. Mr. Wally, upon opening the door, was taken aback to see Dumbledore, especially after recently learning of Blake's connection to the Dumbledore family. The sight of Grindelwald alongside Dumbledore further intensified his shock, given Grindelwald's notorious reputation. Dumbledore, quickly grasping Mr. Wally's apprehension, sought permission to enter, which was granted with a mixture of respect and surprise. The presence of these two powerful figures in the Wally family's doorstep marked the beginning of an important and potentially unsettling conversation. In recent days, the newspapers had been abuzz with news that was now unfolding right in Mr. Wally's living room. The simultaneous visit of Grindelwald and Dumbledore was nothing short of astonishing, signaling to Mr. Wally that something significant was afoot. Inside the room, Monsieur Delacour and Madame Vore also rose to their feet, equally taken aback by Dumbledore's presence. Their surprise only deepened upon seeing Grindelwald enter alongside him. "Please, take a seat," Mrs. Wally said, managing a strained smile as she prepared to serve tea to these esteemed guests. The thought of serving tea to such legendary figures was almost surreal to her. "You're welcome, Mrs. Wally," Dumbledore began, his voice calm and reassuring. "We're here to understand the specifics of the situation. Please, don't be nervous. I want to be clear. If Blake truly kidnapped your daughter Cassandra, then, despite him being my own kin, I will personally ensure he faces the consequences of his actions." Grindelwald cast a disapproving glance at Dumbledore, but chose not to contradict him at that moment. His thoughts were clear. If Blake sought refuge at Nurmengard's School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, there would be little to fear. The Wally family, along with Monsieur Delacour, were stunned by the revelation. They knew of Blake's connection to the Dumbledore lineage, but were unaware he was Dumbledore's child. "Yes," Dumbledore confirmed with a nod. His gaze then shifted to Monsieur Delacour, recognizing him immediately. "Monsieur Delacour, I extend the same promise to you." Monsieur Delacour, recognizing the gravity of having both Dumbledore and Grindelwald in his presence, nodded in agreement. Trusting Dumbledore's word. "Given your trust, I have a small request," Dumbledore continued. "Could we consider removing the 500,000 gold galleons reward for Blake's capture? If he is innocent, such a bounty could endanger him, attracting those with malicious intent. Please understand my concern as a parent." Monsieur Delacour agreed. "I trust you, Professor Dumbledore. I will send a letter to withdraw the 200,000 gold galleons reward." Dumbledore then turned to Mr. Wally, but before he could speak, Mrs. Wally interjected, realizing the discrepancy in the reward amount. "Wait, if Monsieur Delacour contributed 200,000, that means—" "You provided the remaining 300,000? Mr. Wally paled, caught off guard. "I was just concerned for my daughter," he stammered, but Mrs. Wally was not appeased. She was furious, having struggled to keep their finances afloat, unaware of her husband's hidden wealth. "No excuses. Prepare yourself for when we find our daughter," Mrs. Wally declared, her anger palpable. The tense moment was interrupted by a familiar voice. "Dad, Mom, what's happening? Professor Dumbledore, why are you here?" Cassandra's arrival brought a stunned silence to the room. "Cassandra!" Mrs. Wally exclaimed, rushing to embrace her daughter. "Where have you been? Do you have any idea how worried we've been?" Mrs. Wally raised her hand as if to scold Cassandra, but stopped herself, having never been able to bring herself to physically discipline her daughter. The room, filled with tension moments before, now shifted to a scene of relief and unresolved questions, with the presence of Dumbledore and Grindelwald hinting at the complexity of the situation yet to unfold. Ever since she was a child, Mr. Worley had always been protective of his daughter. So when he saw her safe and sound, his emotions overflowed. "My dear, where have you been? "I've been so worried about you," he exclaimed, tears streaming down his face as he rushed to check if Cassandra had sustained any injuries. Suddenly, Cassandra's concern shifted. "Oh, wait, did you issue a bounty on Blake?" she asked, a hint of urgency in her voice. After a brief moment of embarrassment, she quickly added, "You need to cancel the bounty right away. Blake didn't kidnap us, but those aurors, they're out of control. They wouldn't listen to our explanations at all." She continued, her voice laced with disbelief. "As soon as they saw us, they launched an attack without warning. They even targeted us directly. The moment we appeared on the street, we were ambushed by dozens of aurors." Upon hearing Cassandra's account, Grindelwald's reaction was immediate and intense. "What? The aurors from the French Ministry of Magic dared to attack Blake?" he exclaimed, his anger palpable. "Where did this happen? Lead us there at once." Cassandra recoiled slightly at Grindelwald's fierce demeanor. Dumbledore, noticing the tension, shot Grindelwald a stern look. Grindelwald, realizing his outburst, coughed awkwardly and toned down his aggression. "Miss Worley, could you please tell us where Blake is now? Was he apprehended by the aurors?" Dumbledore inquired, his voice gentle and calming. No. Blake managed to defeat those aurors and ensured Fleur and I were safely returned home," Cassandra explained, her voice still carrying a hint of shock. "But I don't know where he is at the moment." The room was enveloped in silence once more, as everyone processed the gravity of the situation and pondered their next move. Chapter 230. Yazi seeks vengeance for Brother Pingtu. Blake's unbelievable feat. In the quiet room, a sense of disbelief hung heavily in the air. Dumbledore, Grindelwald, and Cassandra, who had just recounted an incredible tale, were the only ones not shrouded in skepticism. The others present could hardly believe what they had heard. The idea that Blake, an 11-year-old wizard, had single-handedly defeated dozens of elite aurors and then calmly escorted 2 girls home was as unfathomable to them as a child taking down a squad of heavily armed soldiers would be to muggles. Madame Worley, with a touch of concern, gently placed her hand on Cassandra's forehead, questioning, "This child doesn't seem to have a fever, so why is she spouting such nonsense as if she were ill?" Cassandra, wriggling free from her mother's grasp, protested, "I'm not sick or confused. I'm telling the truth." She had witnessed Blake's extraordinary feat with her own eyes. For someone who had always admired strength, Blake's prowess had significantly elevated his standing in her heart, and she could not tolerate any doubts cast upon his abilities. At that moment, Monsieur Delacour, driven by concern for his daughter, eagerly joined the conversation. Ignoring the question of Cassandra's state of mind, he focused on what mattered most to him. "Miss Worley, did you say that Blake escorted you and Fleur home separately?" he inquired, his gaze briefly lingering on his silver-white hair. "Yes, Blake sent her home first," Cassandra replied, recalling Blake's unique magic that allowed him to teleport by drawing a circle, a spell she had first seen when they hatched dragon eggs in Hagrid's hut, and one she suspected was unique to Blake. Unsure whether Blake would want this new magic revealed, she hesitated to explain further. Dumbledore, noticing Cassandra's hesitation, offered a vague explanation. "Blake has mastered a form of magic similar to apparition. It's not surprising that he can travel between 2 places so swiftly." Monsieur Delacour, satisfied with Dumbledore's explanation and not wishing to delve deeper, prioritized confirming his daughter's safety. He quickly left the hotel, eager to apparat home, and if his daughter was indeed safe, to fulfill his promise by withdrawing the reward. After Monsieur Delacour's departure, Dumbledore and Grindelwald exchanged knowing glances. "Miss Worley, it seems the 3 of you have spent quite some time together recently. Could you elaborate on what exactly transpired?" Dumbledore inquired, prompting Cassandra to recount the events of the past few days, albeit with slight modifications to certain details. As Cassandra spoke of pieces of Otherworld and Blake's solo adventure into the unknown, Dumbledore and Grindelwald shared a look of both horror and excitement. Grindelwald, in particular, felt an eager itch in his palms. The thought of Blake venturing alone into the Otherworld without informing anyone seemed recklessly audacious to him. "He lied to Nico," Dumbledore interjected. "Nico mentioned earlier that when Blake left his estate, he said he was going to find Miss Wally for a few days. And then..." Grindelwald, unable to contain his frustration, finished the thought, and then he took this opportunity to embark on a so-called adventure in the other world without telling anyone. Cassandra, listening to Dumbledore's words, couldn't help but feel a mix of worry and admiration for Blake's daring exploits. "Professor, are you saying that Blake lied to his guardian and left because he wanted to come play with me?" Dumbledore nodded affirmatively. Indeed, he saw it as an opportunity to sneak into that world to explore. However, he didn't anticipate involving both of you in the process. "I must apologize on Blake's behalf for now, and once I've brought him back, I'll ensure he apologizes to you in person," Dumbledore continued. But before he could finish, Mr. Todd Wally was already vehemently shaking his head and gesturing with his hands, clearly opposed to the idea. The thought of another visit, Mem Blake, was unbearable for Mr. Wally. The mere idea of his daughter embarking on another dangerous adventure into another world, potentially not returning next time, filled him with dread. The worst-case scenario played out in his mind, his grown daughter returning from another world years later with a child in tow, making him a grandfather. The thought alone was enough to give Mr. Wally a heart attack. In his mind, it was clear: fireproof, theft-proof, and Blake-proof. After Dumbledore and Grindelwald obtained crucial information from Cassandra, they prepared to leave, their immediate concern being to retrieve Blake as quickly as possible. For the first time in years, Dumbledore and Grindelwald found their interests aligned. Once Dumbledore and Grindelwald had departed, Mr. Wally found himself ousted by his wife and daughter, with the stipulation that he could not return home unless he withdrew the reward of 300,000 yuan. Walking through the streets of Paris, Dumbledore expressed his concerns to Grindelwald. "Blake's teleportation magic is extraordinary. He could transport himself to us at any moment. If he's already out of trouble, why hasn't he come to us? He knows we can protect him from any harm or accusations." Grindelwald, after a moment of silence, shared his thoughts. "I believe the French Ministry of Magic has angered him," he said, interpreting Blake's absence as a sign of his displeasure. "Blake isn't one to shy away from confrontation, especially after being attacked without a chance to explain himself, and almost seeing 2 hostages harmed. This must have crossed a line for him. I suspect he's planning his revenge." Dumbledore, though annoyed by Grindelwald's comparison of their personalities, agreed that their next step should be to head to the French Ministry of Magic, anticipating that's where Blake would go. Grindelwald, however, saw no reason to stop Blake from seeking retribution, arguing that it would be unjust to prevent him from defending his honor. Dumbledore, concerned about the potential for violence, was reassured by Grindelwald's confidence in Blake's restraint. "Believe me, if it were me seeking revenge, it would be far worse. Blake knows where to draw the line." Their conversation highlighted the complex dynamics between the characters, their differing philosophies, and the unpredictable nature of their quest to find Blake and prevent further chaos. Grindelwald's tone carried a hint of displeasure as he spoke of Blake. But as for Blake, well, he shares a trait with you. I can assure you, he won't take a life. With their conversation concluded, Grindelwald and his companion vanished from the street in the blink of an eye, leaving no trace behind. In Paris, Festenberg Square lay quiet and deserted, a stark contrast to its usual bustling state. Blake surveyed the area with a casual demeanor, hands clasped behind his back, as if he were a tourist leisurely exploring. However, Blake was far from being a mere visitor. His presence in the square was driven by a singular purpose: the headquarters of the French Ministry of Magic, hidden beneath the cobblestones of Festenberg Square. With a bounty of 500,000 galleons on his head, Blake was well aware of the risks. Aurors from all over were on high alert, eager to capture him. Yet here he was, standing boldly in front of the French Ministry of Magic's headquarters. This audacious move was not just about seeking revenge, although that played a part. Blake, a student from Badger Academy, embodied the spirit of the Badger, not one to shy away from confrontation when wronged. Brother Flathead, as he was known, lived by a simple creed: retaliate if wronged, regardless of the consequences. But revenge was only part of his motivation. The allure of treasure chests dropped by elite Aurors, especially after a battle, was too tempting to resist. Regretting the swift conclusion of his last encounter, which left him with fewer treasures than he'd hoped, Blake was determined to provoke a more substantial confrontation this time. As Blake sat nonchalantly on a bench, wand in hand, his solitude was abruptly interrupted. Someone seized his arm, and in an instant they apparated to a nearby alley. "Blake, have you lost your mind? Do you have any idea how many people are out there, hoping to cash in on your bounty? They couldn't care less about your survival." The person who had whisked Blake away was none other than Professor Bobbling, whose presence was both surprising and recognizable to Blake. "Of course, I'm aware, Professor Babbling. But what brings you here?" Blake inquired, his tone a mix of curiosity and respect. Babbling stared at Blake, dumbfounded. "I should be asking you that. How can you so recklessly show up here, knowing there's a price on your head? Do you even realize where we are?" Blake responded with a sly grin. "Of course I know. This is the entrance to the French Ministry of Magic. Frankly, I'm here to block their door, so to speak." Blake's audacity and wit were evident, even in the face of danger. His actions were not just about seeking revenge or collecting treasures. They were a bold statement against those who had wronged him, a testament to his fearless nature and cunning strategy.